It's 6:32, Monday, June 24th. I'll call the Board of Selectmen meeting to order. Few regular announcements. The meeting is being taped by Cape Ann 1623 Studios for later broadcasts. Also being recorded by Gail Hunter, who's our minutes keeper, for accuracy in minutes. If anybody else is recording the meeting, please let me know. Ask you to please silence your cell phones so that we don't get surprises in the middle of the meeting. That's the regular announcements. So we're going to take a moment before we get to our regular order of business. We had a tragic passing of a town member this past weekend, Kelly Ray Stallings. So we're going to take a moment to remember her and think towards her family. Okay, item number 0 on the agenda. If anybody has any public comment they want to make about something which is not on tonight's agenda, now's the time to do it. Anything out there? Alrighty, let's get right into it. Item number 1 is the Winthrop Field Committee update. Mike Chapman, step on up.
Here's a copy of the note. Take one and pass those around. Mike Chapman, 131 Bridge Street, Chairman of the Winthrop Field Committee. We are an advisory committee to the Selectmen, and this is our annual update for the board. So as most of you know, we're a 15-acre field. We have a group of 7 of us that are in charge of maintaining the field for the town. The committee members include Sue Thorne, Gar Morse, George Nicholas, Jim Maroney, Matt Brzezinski, Michael Carvalho, myself, Mike Chapman, and our advisor is Ben Rossi. And we're a self-funded committee through the Clara Winthrop Charitable Trust and also funds from the Friends of Winthrop Field. Current account balance is just a little bit short of $60,000 at this point, and that's largely due to the donations from the Clara Winthrop Charitable Trust of $10,000 per year, which normally would cover everything. In some cases, in some years, it's actually an additional, or we have a little left over because we haven't done the second rotary cut. We haven't done some of the maintenance things that are on the list. So just a couple of quick highlights. The contract status, so we still have 1 more year left on the mowing, baling, and rotary cut with Bill Perkins. One of the things that we're concerned about under the items of note is that we will need to develop alternate plans in case Bill Perkins does not answer the request for a quote this year. We haven't been able to find anyone else who's willing to do the work. So we have a couple of different options, and we'll just keep those on the burner as we go forward. This year we had slow draining of the field. There are a series of manholes and drains underneath Winthrop Field, and that was addressed by clearing the drain line on Dan Senecal's property. There's a big willow tree that tends to clog up that drain, and so we've taken care of that. But we'll continue to clear the rest of the drains in the field to keep the drainage down. On the projects for the coming year, so the Jersey Lane Gate, we have all the materials. Most of them have been donated, and the committee members will do that work themselves. And the reason that we're putting a gate up, and it's a very simple 2-cross member, just the same as we did at Bridge Street, is that last year we had someone come in through that entrance and drive around the field a couple times, which if they go into some of the soggy areas, they'll be there for a long time. So we'll take care of that. Drain clearing of the field itself, we've got dash drain lined up for that, so we'll get that done this year, and again, that will hopefully help the drainage of the property. On the longevity bench, there was a question at the last meeting about a review of the Clara Winthrop deed of the field to the town to make sure that we were not going to run into any problems with the pad for the bench. That is now under consideration by Bill Bonacorso. And Bill was a member of the committee for quite a while. He does real estate law, so he is taking a look at it now, and will come back with a yay or a nay or an option going forward. And then finally, we do have donations from committee members and also Friends of Winthrop Field. And this year, the donations total $3,400. So again, we will be able to maintain the field without using any tax monies. So, Eli, I'd like to present the checks.
Thank you. Well, these are large enough that we have to vote to accept them. We have a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 checks, all made out to the town of Manchester or the Winthrop Field Committee. Could I get a motion to accept the donations for the Winthrop Field Committee?
So moved.
Got a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Mine.
Thanks.
All right. Moving on, item 2, boards and appointments committees and updates. So, in our packets, we have a nicely laid out list of committees with, in italics, the people who wish to be reappointed. These are all people who have been contacted. And the new terms are listed in the packets. The only exception here for the italics items, the planning board's rearranging, doing its reorganization meeting coming up tonight. Is that correct? So we have 2 committees, the MAPC representative and the North Shore Task Force representative, both of which have a planning board member appointed by the planning board to serve on that. Those are in italics. We're going to pull those out, and we're going to do those after you guys do your reorganization meeting. Other than that, we'll be voting on the block of these tonight unless anybody wants to pull one out. I will make a comment on the Shellfish Constable. We have not had one for a while. James Elder was working with the Stream Committee for some time on working towards getting us to the point where we could reopen our shellfish beds. I talked to Brian about him. He has been a driver on this for quite some time, and he would be very, very happy to have him working as our Shellfish Constable. Any other questions or comments about appointments here? We have a number of empty spots where we are going to have an empty spot on the planning board. We're going to want to fill that. We have a fairly important empty spot on the Board of Health, and for that, the Board of Health is looking for somebody who has experience with engineering, hopefully with septic systems, since a lot of their work has to do with septic systems. MDs, they're not a dime a dozen, but as far as compared to the septic engineers in town, MDs are a dime a dozen. We need an engineering type, if we can possibly find one, to fill that slot, and their need is relatively urgent. So if you beat the bushes. Huh?
Could you describe the duties, what they would include? Because there was a description of what they were looking for, but I could get that information and email it to you. Okay. And just so you know, there is somebody who came forward expressing interest today,
Okay.
and so they're being vetted by the committee at this point, and committee seems very favorable to this candidate, so most likely you will be getting that name at the next meeting.
Good. Okay. So, believe not all of these terms are 2022. Some of these are one-year terms, but what I would suggest is that we vote these in a block with the terms to end June 30th in the year as specified in the packet. Any comments or thoughts? Can I get a motion to approve the appointments as proposed in the packet?
So moved.
Get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So that was with the exception of the 2 planning board appointments that we'll come back to. All right.
So Eli, we also had those 3.
Oh, yes.
To
Carly Cook,
375th.
Michael Starella, and Peter Colarusso for the 375th committee, right?
Yes.
So that's for this year. So we needed to nominate Carly Cook, Michael Starella, and Peter Colarusso to the 375th committee. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
And can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Well. All right, so next on the agenda is a public hearing. We have several trees we're going to be talking about tonight. So to start with, can I get a motion to open the public hearing request for tree removal, Town Common 1's Crafts Court, corner of Garbella and Rosedale Avenue, 6 Lincoln Avenue, and 3 Pulaski Drive.
Are they 2 separate hearings, or are we?
They were warned as 2 separate hearings.
Well, then
But
we'll
you
do
can-
them separately.
Um,
So the first one will be our Town Common.
So moved.
Second.
Got a second? Okay. So, in late 2018, we were given some money from the CPC to do design for updating the town common pathways. And in 2019, annual town meeting granted construction money towards that effort. We have been working for some time now with a landscape architect. And what's come out of that, among other things, is a request for the removal of some trees on the town common to allow for replacement by other trees and for updates to the past. Some of these trees are actually, one of these trees is actually needs to be removed for the Veterans Memorial. The remaining ones that we're going to be talking about tonight are related to the town common update plan. So this is a public hearing. Hold on. This is a public hearing to determine if we should approve the removal of these trees or if we should look to make changes. We may finish this tonight, depending on what we find out, how the discussion goes. We may continue this and get more information from the landscaper. So, with that, let's talk about this project a little bit.
So just to give a quick overview, so currently there are 20 trees out on the town common. The proposal for the re-landscaping calls for removing 7 of those 20 and replacing them with 11 new ones. So there's a net gain of 4 trees altogether. The 7 that are proposed for removal, there are the 3 magnolias that are sort of when you first come off the steps of Town Hall.
Can you point them out just so there's zero confusion?
Sure.
Can you either mark them on the PDF or?
It's easier to point. So this plan shows the new planting, but I can point out the existing trees. So we currently have 3 magnolia trees. 2 are in very poor shape, this one, and then the middle one is in fair shape. So those are the 3 magnolias. There is a large elm right about here. It's a very tall tree. It's very green at the moment. There are some concerns about its longevity and its condition. The grade of the new larger green space, as it's currently proposed, would be problematic for that tree. It's not insurmountable in terms of changing that grade, but the current plan would be problematic. We'd either have to create a well around that tree or change the grade a bit. So we've got the 3 magnolias, we've got the large elm, and then the tree, there's a maple tree right at the corner before you come into the entrance between Seaside 1 and the Common. It's on the other side of the fire hydrant here. This is the one that would be very problematic for the War Memorial to go in. It wouldn't be, that tree would not survive with the cutting that has to happen to put in the War Memorial. So there's a maple here that comes down, so that's the 5th tree. And then there's another maple on the side here, right along the roadway. And again, it is somewhat problematic for the War Memorial as it gets cut into the bank. So again, there's fear that it will interrupt the root system of that maple tree. So that's the 6th tree. And then the 7th tree is fairly large linden that's up on, sort of on the embankment here as you were to come up the walkway to the police station. A large linden tree here. Again, it's not impossible to save that tree. It's a fairly healthy tree. What it's doing is it is causing some problems with this walkway in terms of the root structure, pumping up the sidewalk. The proposal is to put a set of stairs in here so this walkway is not as steep, so it's easier to navigate. And so there are some concerns about the large root structure and its continued impact on the walkway. Again, it's not as, it probably, there are some techniques that could be used to keep that tree in place. So the ones that are most problematic of the 7, certainly oh, there, if you could just touch my pad. The maple that's in the way of the War Memorial is probably the most problematic. I don't see really any way to save that one tree. The large elm, I worry about its longevity. And if we go ahead and do all of this nice re-landscaping, 5 years from now, that tree has deteriorated further, and then we have to take it down, disrupting everything that we planted. So that's a concern. It's not insurmountable, but it's certainly a concern. I think the magnolias are pretty weak, and the 2 in particular, they're virtually dead now. And then the question of the maple here and the linden. So those are the 7 trees. And again, what you see on the plan here, the existing trees, I don't know if you can see it where you're sitting, they are demarked with an X. New trees are circles. So the 2 large trees on the sidewalk remain. And then you see these 11 new trees being planted throughout the new green. You see a reduction of the amount of asphalt, shrinking down, expanding the green space, and having the new trees planted in its place. So that's a quick overview of the plan.
All right. So far, there have been multiple groups working on this. Concom will be looking at this. The Historic District Commission is going to be looking at this plan once we've finalized the plan. And I think you folks have been involved in some of the meetings so far. Yep. The town tree warden has been involved and is up to date on this. And Tom, I'm going to ask you at some point to discuss these trees a little bit. Questions from the board right now?
I just think process-wise, I feel like we're looking at these things in isolation, these projects, and this is materially different in my mind than what we had conceptually talked about with each individual project.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm definitely not saying I told you so, but I am saying that I remember specifically as part of the landscaping project, I was seeking some sort of rendering of what it would look like. And I was specifically looking for an elevation cut, which I
Yeah.
don't know whether actually ever appeared, because this is in the direction of what I was kind of fearful of as to how this was going to actually impact.
Right, so we do have this rendering that the landscape architect did. That is, gives a perspective drawing.
It's one angle, so if you
Right, it's one angle.
I think our focus has been to some extent on the walkways, the the front of the town hall in specific. And we probably have not had the full information about all the trees up until tonight. That's why we have public hearings for on tree
No, I mean,
removal.
I participated in the process all along, so I'm just, reflecting that I don't think that we've seen how these things all come together in one space. And this is the type of thing that actually is the thing that people probably remember, in addition to the changes to the War Memorial and the landscape. So it is probably the most focal part of town, and I think in a lot of people's minds, it's probably one of the most important places in town.
Yeah, I think the Veterans Memorial got significantly vetted over a period of many months, quite some time ago. There were elevations and models on that. Hold on, I'm going to be getting on to the public and other board members in a moment. Don't worry, we don't have plenty of time. But I agree, we haven't gone into as big a depth on these changes as we did for the Veterans Memorial. Jeff, any thoughts?
I'm concerned about the linden tree, and know how the root systems on those can be really tough. There was some discussion in the information that we got in our packet about dropping a deeper curve down and pruning roots to prevent that tree from uprooting new construction, if it were to be saved. But if that tree is healthy enough, and I'd like to hear from Tom on that, I'd really like to see that saved. Is it my understanding that the maple tree that is down on the corner of where the driveway turns in by Seaside 1, that's being removed and then replaced
Correct,
with a new tree?
right.
And that's because there's such disruption in the construction process that we'd have to remove?
Right, so the new tree is relocated, where you can see a tree.
Yeah.
So the existing tree is about where the walkway begins into the War Memorial.
It's closer here.
It's closer to the new proposed walkway into the War Memorial.
You mean it's closer in towards?
Correct.
Right.
I hate to see any trees go down, but
I remember the discussion about the War Memorial. I mean, it just seems like the design of the War Memorial had to have kind of factored this in, and I just don't remember that being part of the discussion, and maybe it's my amnesia.
Oh, I think the issue is the Veterans Memorial. Most of the discussion happened on that quite some time ago, before you were actually on the board. In fact, some of it I think may have happened before I was on the board.
Well, it was discussed when I was, so this is my third year So we did discuss it in final closure, and the merits of the memorial are completely separate. It's more how we got to this point with the design, an approved design, with an impact to a tree that, in designing it, you had to have thought about the tree.
I think that one tree we did talk
Did we?
about.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the height of that tree? Do we know?
The existing?
Yeah.
60 feet. Yes, yeah.
Would it be appropriate to pull back and talk about the location of the war memorial?
Actually, no. No.
There's no chance that it could be moved to Masconomo?
No. I'm not gonna, excuse me. That,
It just seems so.
stop, please stop for a minute.
Sorry.
This is a public, I have to keep a little bit of control over this meeting, otherwise we are gonna be here forever, and it's gonna, this part of this meeting, depending on what we talk about, could go on for hours. And I'm not gonna let that happen. This is a public hearing specifically about whether or not to remove these trees, and I'm gonna keep it limited to that, because otherwise we're not gonna be able to finish this in a reasonable time frame tonight. Now, the Veterans Memorial has been discussed over many meetings, many years. It's been voted on in multiple public meetings. That is not going to be reopened. So we're not going to talk about the Veterans Memorial and its disposition or status in this meeting. We're going to talk only about these trees.
So what did you
Hold on, I'm still I'm still going to get a little bit more information from some of our town staff, and then I'm going to start taking some input from the public. And I will take time to get input from the public here. If this goes on long enough, I will probably end up having to continue this to another evening, because we could, as I said, we could easily spend a lot of time and displace other public hearings that we have to do tonight. Tom Henderson, could you please give us a short a discussion about the status of the trees related to the Town Common project?
Sure. Do you want me to stand or?
Yes, please. Come to the podium and
Probably the best
we
way
need you
for me,
to
I could evaluate the
Tom,
existing trees.
could you grab a microphone
I could evaluate them in order of their health, starting from the ones in the best condition and going down from there. I would say above and far least affected would be the linden. It's probably the healthiest tree there. Secondly would be all of the elms. They're all in about equal health.
Could you point to those, please?
I can point them if you
Yeah,
like.
thank you, Alex.
So these are the elms, one here, right?
Yeah, there's two along the front, one behind the benches and one way over near the walkway coming in by the church. I think there's 4 there now, if I'm
Right,
not
so
mistaken.
basically in this area.
They're suffering from lack of maintenance. They're very healthy trees. By far, the linden is the healthiest. It's up nice and high. It would be the least affected by any construction. I don't believe any of the elms would be affected by construction. I'm not really sure how the grade is gonna change in that one that you wanna take down. Is that going up or down? the grade?
Going up.
It's gonna be altered. That's why, for the well.
Yeah.
The tree on the corner coming in the roadway, the big maple, Norway maple there, is in severe decline. It's got serious cavity issues, heartwood rot, many things. All you have to do is look up and see it. I mean, any construction that's done in that area is gonna, that tree won't survive. Also, in my opinion, also the Crimson King, which is a cultivar of Norway maple adjacent to it, also in very, right along the
Close to
roadway
the
coming
steps,
in
yeah,
Elms.
yeah.
Yeah, there's 2 trees on that corner that aren't shown
So
here.
these-
Nor the linden is not shown. They're the weakest of all. The large, regular Norway, by far the weakest, then the Crimson King next, and probably decline there from lack of care, improper cutting of the branches, and constant piling of the adulterated road salt and stuff on that corner, is which it always gets pushed to right in against that tree.
Oops, sorry.
and the maples suffer first for that type of damage anyway. But the other trees that are growing in beautiful soil are very healthy. All they need is a little pruning. I'm not sure if everybody knows the history. Is there anyone in the room that knows the history of these elm trees? Yeah. They have Alice Rice, who ran Floyd's for years, and Jeannie Lynch established a fund to replace the elm trees that were taken down in the corner. And this cultivar of elm, it's not a true American elm, but as you can see, it's disease resistant, has never shown any sign of Dutch elm. They thrive there. They don't have the same characteristics, unfortunately, as the American elm, but they've done well there. The only reason they have some dead wood is lack of maintenance. 25 years ago, Bartlett Tree came in pro bono and pruned them, but nothing has been done to them for 25 years, to my knowledge.
The magnolia tree.
Magnolias are gone, basically.
I beg to differ. the one over here is still shapely and full of leaves.
Yeah, but they're full of a fungus disease. And
Okay.
just, if you're gonna put new things in there, you really won't wanna start with disease shrub trees there.
Okay.
I think, I'm really a shade tree person, but I love magnolias also, but their health is terrible. And the third one is not a magnolia, it's a Styrex japonica, but it's basically gone too.
What's the replacement cost of a 40-foot shade tree by the War Memorial?
Probably $10,000 anyway, I would say. Greg would know better than me. I've been out of the business so long, but one quick thing on the War Memorial, because I have been involved in that. It was my understanding that the War Memorial now was not going to be there. It was going to be on the far easterly wing of the town hall. The veterans, we went over this at a meeting about 2 months ago, and they were very receptive to having the solace of it up there and away from public view. And so that's, I believe that's the way that stands now. That stone is being removed, taken to the Legion post, but the memorial, the new memorial, is going to be over on the southeast wing of the building in that little grassy knoll area there.
So this is not an appropriate, up-to-date rendition of
well,
what
well,
was.
I'm not sure now.
Wait.
I'm just saying, I thought
This is not what was sent
so
to
we
the
can
butters.
get
Okay.
away
Just
from
so you know, this is not the plot plan that was sent to those of us who abut the town common. It was, you're exactly what you're saying. They had moved that damn Vietnam wannabe wall over to the far side of the church.
Okay, so a couple of things. I'm going to remind everybody of a few things here. One, don't yak at each other. Talk to me, and I will tell you when you can speak. Okay, and I understand people want to speak, but this is going to get heated and out of hand if we don't treat it civilly and professionally. Two, be civil in your discussion. Now, Greg, did you have any update on the
So
comment
at
on
one
the
point in time during the process of looking at the town common, there was a discussion of the possibility of relocating the War Memorial to the side, back behind where the two new handicap spaces are proposed. That plan did not gain favor with the War Memorial proponents. They expressed a strong desire to stay. There were some who were interested in going to the side, but they are permitted for where they are, and they prefer not to pursue a revision to that.
And that was my understanding as well.
Can you explain, Craig, why it was incorrectly shown to abutters, the old plan with the memorial to the side, which is why I stopped yelling. I thought, well, it's not gonna, be affecting that tree, it's not gonna be affecting those of us who look at the common every day when we look out of our windows.
So
So this has been changed since we were told as abutters what it was gonna look like.
well, I would have to check with Sue Brown on that, because
Yep.
she handled that.
I have
mailing.
no
So-
knowledge of that.
It's important that you see that and that we know what is the real plan. Because how can we discuss when we've had two different plans?
again, I will double check, but my understanding is that that was a concept that did not go forward. This is what has been permitted and approved, and that's what is, at this point, is going forward.
So the discussion's about the memorial, not the tree. So why don't we table the discussion about that tree? Because it doesn't sound like this is gonna get resolved. That's your call.
Well, what I would like to do is talk about the other trees right now. And take public comment on the other trees that are up for removal. And if you want to speak, one thing, you have to have a microphone. You either come to the podium and speak or grab the microphone from Tom Henderson or whoever has it. And please give your name and your address so that we can accurately record it in the minutes. Don, I think you're...
May I have the microphone? Excuse me. Thank you. Yeah, Don Halgren, Central Street. It's my understanding that some of those trees may be memorial trees. I'm not sure which ones. There should be a record in the town. There are people that do have those records. We want to make sure that before we decide to cut any of those trees down, whether in fact they are memorial trees, and properly find those people to whom those memorials were intended, and find if they get their approval or agreement. I'll discuss that further, but that's my point right now.
Okay. Susie?
Hi, my name is Susan Wadia Els. I live at 0 Elm Street. I bought my condo 18 years ago because I thought I was in the Historic District. I joined the Historic District Commission, was on it for a couple of years with Don, and then went back on about 2 years ago. I was asked to resign from the commission because I vehemently opposed having what I call a wannabe Vietnam memorial put on the historic town common by removing the historic rock that's there. As a member of that, as an ex-member of the Historic District Commission, we were never told that any trees would ever be removed. That was not part of our agreement or our knowledge, I should say our knowledge, and therefore not part of our agreement when, well, and it was never my agreement, but the majority of the Historic District Commission, we were threatened, I should say. It's an ad hoc group of veterans. It's not, as I understand it, correct me someone if I'm wrong, this is not a Legion project. This project was initiated by Dan Sennett, who was then the chair of the Selectmen. And I obviously wasn't privy to the conversation, but we were told that he said to these ad hoc veterans, who have been long-time members of the town, wouldn't they like to have and build a Vietnam Wall-looking memorial on the town common? And it took them 10 years to raise the money for this because the interest obviously was pretty not there. When I asked Pat Slade 3 years ago if she would let the town know that this was going to happen, she said, no, they already know. There's no need to put it in the cricket again.
Susie?
Okay, that's it. We were just never told. When it was permitted by the Historic District Commission, we were never told that any trees were to be removed, just so you know.
Back there?
I'm Jennifer Falconer. I live at 4 Church Street, abutting the Green. So since we're not allowed to talk about the Veteran Memorial tonight, I guess I'm in a bit of a quandary as if indeed it's decided that we do not want to cut down particularly the large trees, so what happens? Since it's been approved, and I think it was brought up earlier, it was approved without concern for what would happen with the trees. And how big a group is this versus the group of people that abut the green and are interested in the green, that are pushing for a bigger war memorial. This is Manchester by the Sea. This is not Washington, D.C. Do we need a Vietnam Wall? I mean, I'm all for having memorials for our veterans because they obviously have done a service for this country. But is it serving the interests of the town to cut down, let's say we take out the 3 magnolias or the 2 magnolias, another 5 trees? Is it serving the interest of a larger number of people to have a bigger memorial?
So,
Is my question.
so a couple of things. There's only one tree that impacts the walkway on the memorial, and that's that one maple tree. None of the other trees that we're talking about are involved with the Veterans Memorial. So the Veterans Memorial is not causing us to consider the removal of any of these other trees.
Okay,
So-
thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
So the memorial actually sort of dominoed into the new town green plan. And I know a certain amount of money was given towards this. What is the balance of the budget to redo the entire town green? Let's assume we cut down all the trees. That costs a lot of money. And that we replace them with, my first question, what size trees? Because we're looking at replacing trees that we can't even imagine how they benefit the carbon footprint in their size, which we should all be interested in. What size trees will we be putting up to replace them? And what's the cost of doing all of that, taking down the trees, putting in new trees, all the sidewalk work, et cetera?
So the
Do we have a budget?
So at annual town meeting, we voted in $100,000, I believe, was on the warrant to do the construction for this.
When was that, by the way? I'm just
That
curious.
was this year in May, or April,
April,
actually.
yeah.
Oh, was it in-
As to your previous question, what happens if we decide that we don't want to remove that maple on that corner? Well, then we'll be talking to the landscape architects about how to reposition walkways and shift things around. And that's the case with any of these trees.
And what would happen if the decision is that we just don't want to take down this many trees? Would the plan be reworked then in order to save the trees? Because it's been mentioned several times, as different trees have been brought up, we could work around this, we could work around this.
Presumably, that's what we would be doing, yes. I'm going to let other people speak first, since we have a number of people who haven't gotten a chance to speak yet.
How many healthy?
Could you identify yourself, please?
The Daily, one of the original tree members, Friends of Trees. How many healthy trees would be taken out, just taken out?
Tom, can you, I want to use your definition of healthy.
I think really you should be aware of why so many people are upset about the elm trees. Those elm trees, as I said, were planted as a replacement by Alice Rice and I believe Jean Lynch. They established a fund. Now today I called Fred Rice, who's left town, and I told him, and he wasn't aware of it, and as a former resident, he's very opposed to the elm trees coming down. I'm sure there are many, many more people. My job really isn't to, but I just want to elaborate on why I think the elm trees should stay. Is that all right? As
Well,
tree warden, or
actually,
just-
what I'd like you
So
to
there's just
do is,
one
could you
proposed.
speak to which of these trees are healthy and which are not?
all four
Point
of
of
the elm,
clarification, we're talking about one elm tree.
very healthy.
Okay, that's what we're talking about, and you've referred several times to multiple elm trees and the elm trees alongside the
Right.
road itself.
Right.
Those are not in play here, is my
Okay,
understanding.
it's just the one.
Okay, I'm
All
confused,
right.
because I thought this meeting was addressing all the trees that were listed on all those white placards out
We just
there.
went over the 7 trees. I think that was pretty clear what the 7 trees were. There's one elm tree which is in front of First Parish. That's the one that Tom was talking about that hadn't been pruned for 25 years.
Yeah, all of them haven't been pruned for 25 years.
Okay.
But in terms of
The thing is that when I looked at these trees in the fall, they weren't in leaf, and a lot showed up in them. And like I say, my job is just to evaluate the health of the trees. And I think a lot of people, they initially wanted to take down more of the elm trees when they spoke to me. And I told them, I said, I don't see any reason to take down healthy trees.
Okay, so, but again, I want to make sure that we keep the focus on this tonight, is on the list of trees that we actually have proposed, or we're asking whether or not we want to remove them. Not other trees that have been discussed at some other point in time or another, just the trees that are up for discussion tonight. Which of those trees are healthy and which are not currently? Can you answer that briefly for us?
The healthy, the non-healthy trees would be the big maple on the corner by the big rock, the next Crimson King maple tree, and the two magnolias and the one styrex.
Why are they not healthy? They look so healthy.
The maple tree, the maple tree has a big cavity in the center and heartwood rot. If you go over it, it's quite obvious. The red maple tree, the same thing. It's got many cuts that were made on lower branches that caused the tree to go down and decline, the red Crimson King maple. Anything can be saved and prolonged its life, anything. It's a question of, I would say the big maple tree in the corner within 5 years, you know, I've been in the business for over 40 years, the big maple tree maybe has 5 years. The Crimson King could linger on for another 10. In the meantime, you're going to have to look at the decline of the trees, especially if work is done, any kind of work, it's going to accelerate all that.
Okay. I'm going to go. You have to go to them.
And mine is the next one up, so I just don't know if I can talk ahead, but I already postponed the planning board meeting 15 minutes, so I could talk about my tree.
Oh, your tree?
Yeah,
I have a tree.
But we're not there yet.
No, we're not
I
there.
know, but my entire street is not opposed to the coming down of the tree. The tree is too big for the space and it's not healthy, so it's Lincoln Ave. I have to go.
Gary Gilbert, in the back there, I think you've had your hand raised.
Can you hear me? I have a couple specific questions, probably pretty easy and obvious ones. The walkway by the linden tree. Oh, sorry, Gary Gilbert, 11 Magnolia Ave. The walkway by the linden tree, why can't it just simply be moved a little bit, curve it a bit? I understand there's a 7-foot grade change, you want to have some stairs in there, but why does it have to be exactly there that it might hurt the roots of the linden? That's one question. The other one is the big elm tree, which right in pretty much the middle of the common, would disturb me if it came down, but I know you want to raise the grade about a foot so that it doesn't sink down low in the middle, it rises up, more of a hump. How big would the tree well have to be to make that tree still survive the construction? Because it was mentioned before that has to go, but that's not so obvious yet. I've come to accept that the Norway maple on the corner is going to die, and I hate to see big canopy trees go, even if they're considered weed trees. And, well, I have questions about maybe the general design, which, like the benches and the fountain, but I guess that's a separate subject to elsewhere. Of the 3 magnolias, the last thing would be the 2 of them were said to be rather sick. I think a gentleman here was mentioning that one of them wasn't so bad. In the new design, it looks like, why couldn't it just survive and be part of the new design? So maybe the tree warden could answer a couple of those.
I don't want to put the tree warden in a position about talking about the actual landscape architect's design here. There's enough questions here that, and questions on multiple fronts. So people have asked questions about how long, what size trees are going to be put in place of these, how long it will take for those trees to become established and become what the landscape architect is actually planning for the space. Some of these questions are difficult for us to answer here tonight. There are a number of different ways that we could go after resolving this. For example, we could put We could talk to the landscape architect about putting markers up where the new trees are going to be going out front, so you could physically see what is being proposed. We can go back and do what other board members have asked for in the past, which is to get a stronger elevation view of what this design would look like with the trees, so that we have a better picture overall. And then come back with that in a subsequent meeting. And that's, I honestly don't think we're going to be able to resolve everybody's questions and concerns. And certainly I'm not feeling confident enough about being able to make a decision here on these trees tonight. So I personally, I would be inclined to continue this hearing to our next meeting and take some of these steps to get some of this additional information, both for us and for all of you.
Excuse me, Eli. I think one question that I asked that the tree warden's here, if that big elm, how big of a well might need to be built so it could survive the change in grade? Is that something that could be answered here?
You know, I've built many wells over the years. They would know what's needed. I would think you would need probably out a foot to 18 inches and maybe a foot and a half high, nice stone well around it, and the tree would survive. That's just a general, observation without, but they know what needs to be done.
So I'm going to take a minute to ask the board about the direction that they want to go right now. And then I'm going to ask for one or two more comments, and including from you, Mr. Manassian. Does direction I've...
Just as people are here, I just as soon hear what their comments are. We don't need to repeat the comments, but what people's comments are.
Take some more comments.
And then we'll, another 10 minutes or so, and then we'll figure out what the next course,
All right.
the next steps are.
Peter Manassian.
Because we have another hearing.
Hi, I'm Peter Manassian, 5 Wood Home Road. Greg, you mentioned that there's money set aside $100,000 for the project. Most of the trees, with the exception of the few that Tom mentioned that are not healthy, are all crying out for pruning and for care and for feeding and the like. They've been let go now for, he said, 25 years. And you can look at the elms out there, and there's sucker branches all over them, which is not good for the health of the tree. Is any of that $100,000 set aside for the maintenance of the current trees, so that the ones that are currently there now that are healthy but in need can be further taken care of for their longevity?
So that's a possibility. We haven't specifically targeted dollars for that, but that's something that could be pursued.
All right, I'm going to take some additional input from people who haven't had a chance to speak. I'm trying to balance the fact that all of you are here tonight and you came for this purpose with the other hearings that we have to do tonight as well. So anybody else who hasn't spoken before, who has a different comment to make on these proposed trees on the town common, please let it go ahead.
Camilla Blair, 2 Burnham Lane. It just seems to me that this whole planning is a little off. That the landscape, well, number one, I didn't know anything about it. Okay, that's bad on me. I accept that. But it seems the landscape designer who designed this new memorial and this whole town commons, if he's any kind of decent landscape designer, the first thing he wants to do is save every tree that can be saved and feed them and prune them and take care of them. So I'm a little disturbed that you're telling us the design was approved and now these landscape people are saying, well, just get rid of these trees. You can't overnight create 50-foot trees. You're talking about years and years and years before any new trees are going to make the town common look decent. And I don't understand. It's like putting the cart before the horse. Yes, and why isn't the landscape designer here? So we could actually look at him and her, and say, well, you know, what kind of landscape designer are you that you are just perfectly happy to take down 7 trees, most of which are healthy?
Or just explain the plan. I would think that we would just want, obviously you've hired someone capable, and I'm surprised that we're having a conversation about the trees without that person being here. That's all.
Hang on. So there actually were multiple meetings before this where the landscape designer was here, and we're principally talking about the layout and the walkways, the front of Town Hall. And those meetings were, and there were a lot of meetings with other committees, the Friends of the Trees, Historic District Commission, multiple groups over a pretty extended period of time already on the basic design and layout.
Well, wouldn't it be helpful then, if you're going to have a public meeting, to have all these supposed committees, to have a representative of every committee standing here tonight explaining to us why they think it's a good idea to take down these trees?
So I think that I tend to agree with you. I think that is one of the reasons why I know it's one of the reasons why I suggested that a continuation of this to give us an opportunity to bring in, you know, a little bit more help, input would be a good idea. Susie, there's more people who haven't spoken already. Anybody else wants to speak?
It's hers.
But it's going to be brief, and you're not going to talk about the Veterans Memorial. I'm going to gavel you right down.
I want to know what the procedure
Turn that
is.
around.
Turn it around.
Talking to the wrong end.
I want to know what the procedure is, given that the abutters, the plan that we were given, the plan that we were given was not this plan about the trees as well as everything else. And I want to know what the procedure is to reopen that hearing so that the abutters can see the real plan and we can have a real hearing. I also want to know what the procedure is to reopen the Historic District Commission's recertification of this whole plan. Because when they approved their plan, the trees were not in there.
Susan, stop. I said at the beginning of this meeting, the Historic District Commission was going to meet on this project after the final design had been finished. The final design depends on the outcome of what we decide regarding these trees. So they are going to be meeting again. It's not something that has to be reopened. It is still in process.
I was not here when you said that.
Okay. And as far as abutters, I can tell you that on this particular project, notices were sent out to 50 abutters.
Yes.
Very detailed notices.
Yes, I got one.
Nobody responded.
It was not this plan. That Vietnam wannabe was on the other
Stop.
side.
We're not.
I just want you to know, we did not have this plan that tree was coming down.
It was a meeting to discuss the town common project.
But this wasn't the plan we were given, Eli. That's important.
I know the notice that I was given the notice that was sent out. I'll have to inquire about the plan that was sent out. I'm not aware of the one that you're talking about. All right. Muffin, do you have any comments now?
No.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense to get some answers to the questions that have come up
And
put it back
continue
on the
this.
agenda. Yep.
All right. So I'm going to take a motion to continue this hearing until our next meeting.
Do we have a clear list of questions?
What's that?
Do we have a clear list of questions?
I think we have a pretty clear list of
Yeah, the
questions.
whole page.
Yeah.
When is our next, well,
Our next meeting is actually on
I'm not sure we
Be
should.
July 8th.
July
Right, and
8th.
we need to make sure that those that need to be present can be present before we say it's July
Well, I would continue it to July 8th.
8th.
And
Okay,
if we have to continue it again, we will, but we
Right.
will work hard to make sure that Toby in particular was available. He was not available tonight.
right,
He's,
right.
he's out of state, actually,
Right.
so it just wasn't possible for him to be here. He wanted to be here, but he wasn't able to. But he certainly will make every effort to be at the next one.
So you wanna?
I want a
you
motion
so
to
move?
continue the town common tree hearing until July 8th.
So moved.
May I get a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. We will continue this. We will do our dead level best to get you all information in advance of the continuation of this hearing. I understand it's a sensitive topic. And I'm sorry if I've been abrupt with some of you, but I'm already way over my time budget on this, and I'll be here with us, the rest of the board, while you folks are not. We have hearings, another tree hearing that we need to open now for trees on Crafts Court, corner of Arbella and Rosedale Avenue, 6 Lincoln Avenue, and 3 Pulaski Drive. I'm so sorry. No, we already moved to continue that hearing, so yes, that is what I'm asking. I'm asking for a motion to open the public hearing. Get a second, please?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. First tree, Crafts Court. Well, actually, who's here for these other hearings? The one on Crafts Court, corner of Arbella and Rosedale, I think that's actually Tom, and 6 Lincoln Avenue, that was going to be Christine Delicio, and 3 Pulaski Drive, that's you. All right, so we're going to do Crafts Court first, and I'm going to ask you, since this was your request to have this tree removed, I'm going to ask each person who's a resident who was involved in making a request to have a tree removed, briefly state the reason for their request, and then we're going to be talking to the tree warden to get his opinions on the trees and try to move this as quickly and efficiently as possible. If you could pass the mic back to her, again.
It's for the filming.
Actually, do you object to having Ms. Delicio go first?
Absolutely, no. I missed the first part of the directions, but Christine Delicio, 6 Lincoln Avenue. I really couldn't tell you the honest truth. It's a very large tree. It's probably 50% of the leaders are not healthy. The tree actually lost a very large one, maybe 40-foot leader. Last fall, we had to remove it with a chainsaw. It's super dangerous. The sidewalk is non-existent in front of the house. It's just too big for the space. So I've talked to all the residents on the street, and there is no opposition. I guess when this tree does come down, I do have the history of, will be ground in this spring, but what is the recommendation, or what's the time frame of repairing the sidewalk long-term?
I will take the DPW's discussion on that.
So Chuck Dam, DPW Director. So we haven't talked about the sidewalk specifically. That sidewalk is on the list of poor condition sidewalks that need to be replaced sooner rather than later, or in the beginning of our rehabbing of sidewalks in town. But I have not scheduled that particular sidewalk for replacement. We certainly need to resolve the tree issue first, and then grinding of the stump in the spring, and then we can look at timeline for maintenance of the actual sidewalk.
Okay. Tom, can you discuss the 36-inch Norway on 6 Lincoln Street?
Yeah, we've been to this tree many times, trying to save it. It's in severe decline. It has heartwood rot, vines growing out of the leaders. I can see their concern. There was a lady working next door in her yard, and I just asked her what the general consensus of the neighborhood is, and there was no one that objected, she said, to the neighbor. I'm sure they'd be here. I agree with that it's a dangerous tree, and that probably the time has come that it should be taken down.
Okay. Just so everybody is aware, the way the public hearings work, we hold the public hearings, we eventually will close the public hearing, and then we'll vote. The vote comes after us closing the public hearing. So I know that you have to go back to your meeting, so we're gonna take all of the input, and once everybody's had their chance, that's when we're gonna vote. We're not gonna vote on these individually. Sorry, that's the way we have to do it.
Fine,
You good to go?
good to go.
All right.
Suzanne, thank you.
Nobody else is here for 6 Lincoln Street? All right.
Lincoln Avenue.
Avenue, I'm so sorry. Back to you.
Tanya Dixon, and I'm at One Crofts Court. Can I just be clear that I didn't come in, when I came in last week, I didn't come in to ask the tree to be taken down. I came in to ask the tree to be pruned. The tree is an enormous tree. It's on right in front of my house, and it was pruned a few years ago, but it's such an enormous tree that what they did for it, they took down the major leader that trucks that would go down the street would actually hit, that they spray painted an orange spot on it so that the trucks wouldn't hit it anymore. They took that down. Forever grateful for that. The tree is massive. It's more than, the tree warden can tell you more about the tree. It's more than one tree together. We just had a new roof put on. It hangs over our roof. There's a lot of, it needs severe loving. If it is going to be saved, I don't know what the condition, there's water that comes out of it. I don't know what the condition is, the health of the tree. It's gonna be a massive expense. My thing is, I don't wanna have to come down here every few years, ask for it to be pruned, then it gets put on a cut down list, and then I have people coming down my street angry who called to have the tree taken down. It's just one, it's a beautiful tree. I get that it's a beautiful tree, but if you asked anybody who lived, if the tree were right in front of their house, they may have a different opinion. I have children, there are bedrooms, we have cars, kids play on the street. If the tree is not gonna be taken down, it needs a major, major pruning. And I know that there are other members on the street that they have some foot in the game too, because some of the tree goes directly at their house. So I would just really love to see it taken care of, if not cut down.
Okay.
Because I don't know, I just can't imagine the expense of doing it all the time. So that's not my expertise, but
All right.
you can speak on
Tom,
that.
your turn.
You know the tree.
Yeah, it is. It's a lovely tree. Unfortunately, we did have to take that leader off that went over the road because we have a statute that requires 13.4 inches. And but we have pruned the tree several times. You're constantly going to have small deadwood dieback branches dropping from it. I looked at the side over your house, and I can see, and over the neighbor's driveway where they did the last time they pruned, they did cut it back pretty hard on that side. But that's what it's all about, taking care of our trees. I'm so glad that was a mistake. That were my instructions to post the tree for removal. But anyway, that's the good point of having these hearings. As you can see, everybody gets a chance to have their input, and that's why we won't make mistakes, and we will give attention. I'm sure through the DPW I can arrange to have the tree pruned this fall or after August. It has some issues, what you see coming out of it.
Yes.
That's called fluxing.
That's
Is
what-
what,
that's
yeah,
only one
but
tree.
that doesn't, yeah, it's a 4-liter oak. It probably goes back to colonial times. It's at least, I would estimate, 175 to 250 years old, and it was left there for a reason, believe me, when that was pasture. And all the harvestable lumber, straight trunk oaks were taken, but it is the biggest oak tree in Manchester. It qualifies for heritage tree status, actually, and we may be able to get a grant to even, fertilize it and improve its health, although,
Because there are wires running through it.
yeah, no, it's a lovely tree. I'm so happy. You made my evening.
Okay. Well, does anybody else have any comments on that oak tree? Lisa, could you pass the mic back to Lisa?
Hi, I'm Lisa Zaracket from Two Crafts Court, and I just wanted to add in, I don't know anything about trees, but I completely agree with Tanya and the tree warden. I mean, it really does need a major pruning. It kind of leans over to our side of the yard, and then our two trees over there are getting kind of leaned over as well because of the branches that are kind of coming over. So I completely agree that it definitely needs some pruning. It's very dangerous. We have kids in cars, everything else, the same thing. And there are a lot of kids and there's the bedrooms right where the kids are. So, that would just be a tragedy if anything horrible happened. And we just want to prevent that. That's all we want to do.
Okay. Well, this one sounds like it's easy.
I also live on Crafts Court, and I just
We're going to have to do it right. Pass the mic up and tell us your name.
Anne Marie Gentilucci, and I live at 5 Crafts Court. I would agree with Tanya and Lisa that it is a giant, beautiful tree, and I would not want it taken down, but it definitely needs a significant pruning. So that's my 10 cents.
All right. Okay. Peter Manassian, I think we got probably enough to make a decision on this one.
Peter Manassian, 5 Woodhome Road. I'd like to have Tom characterize the health of the tree, if he could more completely. The tree is, he's indicating is 175, 250 years old. It's not a tree that should be cut down. It's a tree that should have a plaque on it. It's a very special tree. There's no tree like this tree in the entire town. The tree is a town tree. It's inches from the road. It should be designated clearly. If ever a tree would be defined as a heritage tree, this is a heritage tree, and this tree should be cherished and not be thought of as being removing it. I just would like to ask Tom about the health of the tree, and we've heard thoughts about having a very severe, very dramatic pruning of the tree. I'd like to have Tom's comments about whether that kind of pruning or how severe or how complete the pruning has to be in order to still maintain the health of the tree, but at the same time provide the concern, if there is any concern about the limbs and so forth.
Actually, I think the consensus here is pretty strong that needs a significant pruning. But rather than taking up the meeting time to go into the details of what that pruning would be, I'd like to take that out of band. So we can, you two know each other, and I know both of you. We can hook you up and discuss the detail of the pruning afterwards. I'd prefer it if we could do it that way.
Yeah, we'll do it to the normal standards. We won't affect its health.
Yeah. So I'd like to move to the tree at 3 Pulaski Drive right now, unless, Mr. Smalley.
Tom Smalley, 3 Pulaski Drive. I have a town maple that's on my front yard, and the branches, the trunk of the tree is, the bark is coming off and is all dead on one side. And I have a bunch of kids in the neighborhood that ride their bikes by, and I'm just very concerned that they could get hit. And I asked Rob Lations 2 or 3 years ago, and he said it was dying and it should come down, but I wasn't in favor of taking it down. Then I wanted to see what would happen, how it progressed, and it didn't progress well. It's just getting worse. And then, so I guess the procedure was to come down to the DPW and talk with DPW chairman and go through the process of meeting with you folks and seeing what you decide. Because I think that if you take a look at the rest of those maple trees on that street, they're fully blossomed and they look terrific. But this one is in dire trouble.
But that one hasn't been pruned yet, right? So
I have no idea.
Okay. Tom?
It's on its way, and I would recommend just taking it down, like the gentleman says. A new driveway was put in there. Obviously, it adversely affected a mature tree. It's gone, basically. Yeah, you're making the right decision.
Questions from the board on that one?
Anybody else from Pulaski?
What's that?
Anybody else from Pulaski?
Anybody else from Pulaski? Thank you. All right, so that's the 20-inch on Pulaski. All right, last tree, corner of Arbella and Rosedale Avenue. I believe that's not a resident request. That's you. So you're.
All the neighbors have been approaching me for years to keep checking. We've watched it. It's has a big basal scar, hollow cavity, extremely dangerous tree. I could probably just say it could come down for public safety issue, but I always prefer to have the hearing process so everybody gets to speak. It's a very dangerous tree.
Anybody from Arbella and Rosedale have any comments that they want to ask and make about this tree? Any further comments from members of the board on these trees? Any further comments on any of these trees in this hearing from the members of the public? I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Get a second?
Second.
We'll take the votes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're going to take these in order that they are listed in the public hearing notice. The 72-inch red oak on Crafts Court. That was the one that everybody is strongly in favor of pruning and possibly recommending for some type of merit badge. I'll make a motion that we do not remove the tree on Crafts Court, the 72-inch red oak on Crafts Court, and instead have the town prune that tree. Can I get a second for that?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The 24-inch white ash on the corner of Arbella and Rosedale Avenue. This tree was characterized as being dangerous by the tree warden. Motions from the board?
Make a motion to remove the 24-inch white ash at the corner of Arbella and Rosedale Ave.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? 36-inch Norway on the 6 Lincoln Avenue.
I'll make a motion to remove the 36 Norway maple located at 6 Lincoln Ave.
I will second that one. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 20-inch Norway maple on 3 Pulaski Drive.
I'll make a motion to remove the 20-inch Norway maple located at 3 Pulaski Drive.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I forgot to ask the tree warden while he was here. Tom, you still out there?
No, he's gone.
No. No. Hey, we've voted to keep the red oak,
Yes.
yay, and nuke the remaining 3. However, my question was, do we have any proposals lined up for replacing any of those 3s that we just removed?
That corner, if they would like a tree, I'm sure the Friends of the Trees would be like to put trees anywhere. We're always available for. Yeah.
All right.
The tree on the corner of Bella and Rosedale, that's a very difficult location. That's right at the apex of the iron fence and the stump ground. You're going to have a tough spot there
Okay.
for a tree. Maybe inside the cemetery if they let it, whatever, you
All
know.
right. So you guys can review those 3
Yeah.
spots and
And
make a
also on
recommendation for-
Pulaski Drive, I mean, we'd be willing to put a tree if there's a place there far enough away from the driveway, the new asphalt driveway.
Okay.
And what was the other tree? I forget.
Lincoln, 36-inch.
Lincoln Ave, yeah. We could stick one somewhere there, something that wouldn't get as aggressive as that big sugar maple, or maybe a Bradford pear or something like that.
All right.
You know.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
What's the timing on, after you've approved it, what would be the timing on this?
Well, the town will get to it as soon as they reasonably can. DPW, do you have any comments?
So we're currently completely out of money on the tree budget until July 1, so typically we get a big enough purchase order so that we can have the contractor that we use come in and do all of them at once, so they're just mobilizing once. And it also depends if they need a crane or if they change
So
the
that's not too
stuff.
far.
But yeah, I would suspect before the end of summer.
Yeah. Good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Let's move on to item number 4, which is a public hearing. New liquor license for Helen's Bottle Shop, LLC at 2 School Street. Is there anybody here for that? Okay, good. All right, can I get a motion to open the public hearing? Get a second? All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, come on up and tell us about your project. Yeah, why not?
Where's the mic?
I have one.
Hello. Yes.
That works.
Okay. My name is Alexis Harwood. I live in Gloucester. I've been in the hospitality industry for over 20 years, and I grew up in my grandparents' wine shop. And my grandmother's name was Helen, which is where the name's coming from. And my other grandmother lived this was in Syracuse, New York, and her name was Helen. And she bought the wine from that one, from the other Helen. So skip ahead to now, I've been trying to look at different spaces in the area to open my shop. I happened to get connected with Paula a couple weeks ago, and she brought me to a couple spaces in Manchester. I appreciate actually the whole tree discussion, because I think that's part of why this town is so pretty, is the preservation of everything. So I found the space on 2 School Street. And my plan is a specialty wine shop, so it's not a liquor store or a package store. It's a specialty wine shop that also sells beer and specialty food. The food to start out would be packaged already, so there's no food handling on premises. However, the space is being built out so that it can accommodate plumbing in a year or 2 if I want to expand into that. I don't know if that gives a little bit of a backstory.
Okay. Your paperwork appears to be in order. Questions from the board?
It sounds exciting.
Thank you.
I had one question. We have a separate issue with a 1-day license to serve alcohol. And for that, the person who was asking for that, they were required to submit a certificate of liability insurance. I looked through all of this documentation. I don't see any such certificate in here.
I do have. Yeah, I do have. I can send you that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we didn't include that in the package. We do have that.
Okay, fine.
So I'm sorry.
That's my only question.
It's a fairly thick application. We didn't give you everything.
I bet.
So are we still talking about Helen's?
What's that?
Are we still talking about Helen's?
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just curious what drew you to Manchester to do business.
Well, so I live in Gloucester, so that's close. I started coming to Manchester last year, going to Club Excel. And it's very beautiful here, and I work at the Market Restaurant currently in Annisquam, so I have been there for 4 years, and I know a lot of customers that live here. And this town kind of reminds me of a town that I grew up in, which is called Cazenovia, New York. It was on a little lake as opposed to the ocean, but they have a big focus on the preservation of the town, and I really appreciate that. So that's something that where I put a business, I want that to be something that's important.
Have you found trying to start a business in Manchester easy thing to do?
I've had a lot of positive feedback that is exciting. I also have quite a large network of people in Hamilton and Gloucester and Boston, and I think that's one of the exciting things is sort of networking all of that.
Great.
So.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Further questions, comments from the board? All right, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing. Get a second? Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now, can I get a motion to approve the new liquor license for Helen's Bottle Shop?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Good luck, welcome to Manchester.
Anticipated opening.
A little bit depends on the state, but hopefully, I think September 1st would be great.
Nice.
So that's
Well,
what I'm
good luck.
hoping for. Thank you.
luck.
Thank you very much.
How many unused liquor licenses are there in town now? Was that the only unused one?
We have one more package.
We have-
Um,
Okay.
And I think we have a couple of restaurant licenses.
And then I heard that there's a bar going in at Superfine?
Yeah, that's in the works. We haven't seen,
You haven't seen anything?
we haven't seen formal applications yet.
All right.
Is it a bar and restaurant or just a bar?
I just want to know if they're bringing the burger back. It's like
No, I heard a burger shop with liquor.
I just want the burger back. That's all I want.
Thank you.
All right, so we're only, 50 minutes late on the DPW operations update. I see you lost your sidekick.
Isn't it funny?
Aren't you glad they aren't?
All the important things still to come and no one here.
Seriously.
Is there a mic on that testing?
Hi, Chuck.
Hello, good evening.
Want to tell us what's going on?
Well, none of the trees were mine, so count my blessings where they come. So just, I guess, a quick update. Cut me off whenever, or ask me questions about any in particular thing I don't hit on. But in terms of daily operations, we've been out doing the crosswalks, weather permitting, for the past few weeks. We should finish those in the next week or so, weather permitting.
Weather permitting, definitely before the 4th of July.
Yeah, I'd commit to that. I mean, it's going to rain tomorrow, and then we need a dry road. But
I know.
yeah.
It has been a really difficult spring. But I
Yeah,
think
it seems like one day on, one day off, and we also, our machine broke, so we have a new machine now. So we're trying. That's all I can do. So we've, on the water side, we sent out the CCR. You should be getting notice in the mail this week, just with the general, what happened in the last year. 'Cause CCR is Consumer Confidence Report. It's mandated by DEP. We actually, on the wastewater side, we had a meeting with EPA about our upcoming permit limits on the plant down here. That all went very well. I think we won't have any surprises in the permit with EPA. The Harbor Loop project will start after the 4th. We've been working with the butters. The contractor will be Green Mountain. That's the last piece of basically infrastructure that needs to be addressed to address the consent order that we're under with DEP. I think it's going to go well. Green Mountain is a very good company. I'm happy that they got the work.
What kind of impact?
There'll be access requirements, so we will need to be in people's backyards. Our Concom permit won't let us use heavy equipment, which there's none that's needed in people's backyards anyway, but we will need, pretty big trucks to put the materials in the pipe from each end. And just, it'll be constant communication about they'll be here this day, or inevitably they won't have the right thing, so they'll have to do what they thought they were going to do today, tomorrow, and so on. There will be a smell and odor that's associated, especially if you have a dry trap in your, so you have your plumbing traps that kind of keep out the vapor. It does smell, but it's, I'll say, it smells toxic, but it's not toxic. Like, it doesn't have any effects or anything like that. But as you can imagine, it does have a smell. So those will be the only impacts for that. We'll try and work with them the best we can. The revetment project, unfortunately, we still don't have a go-ahead with FEMA on that work, and so
Which one?
The revetment
At the beach.
Singing
Beach.
Yep, Singing Beach.
We
Is
don't.
there any way we could get the equipment out of there?
Yeah.
So we had discussed today, the contractor will have it out by the end of the week. We were going to have them move it for the week of the 4th anyway, but it seems like the way things have been progressing with FEMA, and just with the, the millions of people that are at the beach over the course of the summer. We'll probably just have them mobilized back in the fall.
Did they finish that one section or not?
I think substantially, yes. There might be some. That was the one section where there were big revetment stones that were missing. I don't know if they are buried in the sand or taken out to sea. So I don't know that they got more revetment stones on site before they had to stop. But that would be pretty much the only thing on that side that needs to be done. But
They're gonna take the bucket of.
yeah, they'll completely be demobed. Yep.
And that'll happen before the end of this week,
Yes.
because it's really dangerous.
Yeah, it's getting tight.
I went down there and it was total gridlock. People couldn't get in, couldn't get out. People were parking in the street, and emptying out their cars and walking across the street in front of other cars. It was a very dangerous situation, partly because they don't have that part of the loop to unload. So.
Yep.
Is there any update? Is this just general, or do you have more?
DPW update. Yep.
Yeah, no, but do you have items?
I'm not reading off a script. I was just going to go off what I had.
Oh, you're doing a great job.
Yeah. Well, I met with Andrea on accounting today, so I have it kind of all worked out.
Is just any update on the east end of town, water pressure?
Yep. So we will be going to Concom tomorrow to get our order of conditions. I think there shouldn't be any surprises there. And we will be bidding the project in July. And if we get the contractor that is ready to go to work, then we'll be out there doing work in August on Magnolia. And then either way, we'll be done with Magnolia, Ocean, and Raymond funding permitted, but I think that's reasonable by winter shutdown timing. I don't know if you remember, but last year we did the other side of Ocean Street, and they did that work kind of well into December, even with regular winter conditions. So this would be, I would anticipate the same type of thing where if we needed to keep going in the winter to get the work done, it's kind of good.
So that would go basically from the Bath and Tennis Club to where?
No, so on Raymond Street, we'll go from Summer Street all the way to the end.
Okay.
I'll have an ad alternate for Butler, which also should be done if we're in the neighborhood.
Yep.
On Magnolia, we'll go all the way to Overledge with an additional additive in the bid to go. I want to extend the main on Overledge down to University. And then I want on Magnolia at Overledge, I'll go all the way to the end of Magnolia, because that's a potential loop to get back to Ancient County Way in the future. We don't have the money or the need to do that right away, but looking ahead, that's what we'd do. And then Ocean Street, we'll do Ocean Street down to basically all the main on Ocean Street will be complete. And then we'll have an ad alternate there to do Victoria, which could also, same vintage, but just less people, not as critical.
Is there any way to, so today was the start of MSA, and it's my annual appeal, because it scares the bejesus out of me to watch those kids crossing 127. Is there any way to get that repainted?
We've been asking.
Well, we'll be painting the crosswalk no matter what. So we
Get a
will.
light there? I know there's a flashing light at the corner for cars coming north or east, but can we get up like there is at Lincoln Street and School, like one of those?
Yeah,
I had a conversation. I randomly had a conversation with Brad Hill, and he said, just if that's a priority, he thinks that there might be money available. But he said you got to send a letter.
Yeah, we can send a letter. I mean, to be honest, the money doesn't really worry me that much. The one on Lincoln Street wasn't that much. I'm more worried about just the kind of jurisdiction of me showing up and putting it in.
Yeah, no, where it's a state highway.
No, we'd have to do it through the state, but I think if we say that it's a concern of ours, and I'm not trying to push an agenda here, other than I do have a personal worry about, but when you see those kids, they're small, and they're shuffling their bikes across 127, these cars are whipping around. I'm just panic every time I see it. Cringe.
So just over the course, because you've made this same pitch before, and I've always brought it to. So we have one contact that's at the highway garage who's kind of lower level that I would say isn't it's not his call.
Yeah.
But the people that ran the project on Summer Street last year, those guys are more the people that, you know, you're supposed to ask these questions. And so I have asked them, and I can re-ask them to take a closer look. I don't know that I did specifically ask that question when last year. Since then, I've heard rumors about potentially them redoing Bridge Street.
Right.
And when I talked to that exact same person about, well, if you're going to do Bridge Street, I would like to be involved. So because we have comments about not only, you know, crossings and whatnot, but also sidewalks and potential, you know, bike lanes, or, you know, all the different things that we'd like to have.
Yeah.
And the response that I get, at least, is, you know, in the scheme of DOT, it's a very small stretch of road for very insignificant dollars. So much like Summer Street last year, the way they do those projects is they get to the end of the fiscal year and they say, we have $1 million left, where can we spend it? Let's go over to Manchester and reclaim Summer Street. So they said, so potentially we could do that on Bridge Street. I said, well, that's fine, except, you know, I would like more than 30 days notice before you're going to repave a road, so that, let alone the surface treatments that we might be able to get included in that work. You know, I have water mains and sewer mains and other things that get neglected. So now, in the case of East Manchester and doing those water mains, it worked out that I can do the water mains that we have, but I could have easily done a lot of work on Summer Street as well, but now I can't because it's a moratorium for accessing the road. So it's very frustrating for me as well, but I will put a bug in there about just a light. But
I'm just concerned about the liability, because we have, you know, 2 months of 7 to 15 or 16-year-olds crossing there because they can't drive. And, you know, some of them get driven there, but some of them do walk across that stretch.
Okay. What else? That's pretty much it.
What are your 3 big needs?
My 3 big needs.
Yeah, like, that you're not getting.
I think from a manpower's perspective, we could use more manpower. I think when I look forward, there's several guys that have been here 20 to 30 or even over 30 years that are going to be retiring in the next 5 to 10. So it'd be nice to that next wave of people that could potentially be here 20 to 30 years, learn from the people before they leave, rather than learn on the fly, especially when it comes to the water and wastewater side, but even highway when it comes to, you know, how the town operates with trees and sidewalks and crosswalks and all of these things. It's just helpful. And we really need the, you know, if we could get more done, you know, one of the criticisms tonight, I think, was maintenance of trees. None of our guys touch any of the trees.
Right.
If we had more guys, maybe we'd consider it, but we don't. I think
So people, what else?
Got me off guard on this one, I guess. I think our facility at Pleasant Street is an issue that will need to be addressed one way or another. We did demolish a barn that the door fell off and almost hit a person that was, you know, just getting in a truck. So we demoed, we condemned it and took it down. I will be rebuilding it to an extent, you know, not knowing exactly how long we'll be on that space. So, there's some things that you just have to do, and there's other things that we'll try and make them as repurposable as possible. So like the structure itself should be, you know, one of those kind of temporary emergency structures that we can take with us if we end up going anywhere, or be okay to be there for several more years.
Over the next 12 months, are there any big capital or equipment needs you see?
No, I think our budget requests were fine in terms of the capital expenditures.
Is there any depreciation that is coming up?
No, I mean, we will have dump trucks that need to be retired, but we've replaced a couple of them since I've been here, and we have smaller ones in the fleet that are fine. On the pump station side of things, our pump stations have all been rehabbed and are new, so there's no issues there. I think we're making strides, and we have the budget in place to go forward with the both of the plants. So I'm not too worried about that. We've been able to make a couple key purchases just in our operating budget, all like lawn mowers and the paint machine that I referenced. I mean, those things aren't cheap, but if you have enough kind of fluid funds on a year-to-year basis, you can pick them up. So that's what we've done.
Great. You guys are doing a great job.
We're not waiting for us. No,
What?
we're not waiting for them, she said. She said, I guess you're not waiting for us. No,
But as soon as you're ready, you can come on up.
Right. As soon as you're waiting for us, come on down.
We have more room.
We were supposed to go down. I thought they were
No.
going to be coming up.
I thought they were coming up.
That's what I thought was going to be one of my next questions. Where's FinCom?
Yeah, I'll go say.
So you guys are doing a great job.
Thanks.
I have a question about whether we need any input from Chuck on the cemetery fee
Yeah,
schedule issue.
Will you run through that?
Yep.
Cemetery.
We
have all the.
I have a copy, but in general, the way this is manifested since I've been here is we were contracting out the grave digging services. So that was a low bid effort, and so Mrs. is our low bid. And I will say they were a qualified contractor, but not exactly local and not exactly responsive. They would dig a grave, but not in the timely manner. And then they also own the restoration of the grave and responsible for planting and so on. And they just weren't able to get back here in a timely enough fashion to keep the people that had just lost these loved ones happy. And it wasn't the type of, contractually, I didn't feel like I had a way to force them to do that at their price. They certainly owned it, but there's reality. And so we took a hard look at the fee schedule, which before was just us passing on Mrs.'s cost. And actually, we stayed out of it. It was just the funeral home or the family paying the Mrs. directly. And so again, passing on their costs. We, however, still were involved in that process. We just weren't being compensated. So this is twofold. One, basically aligning it with our costs to perform the same services that Mrs. were, while also recovering the costs that we already had incurred. We just had no way to collect a fee for it and hadn't been. So my assistant Kay, who deals directly with the funeral homes and deals directly with the guides when they have to go and mark out a grave and meet with the families when they buy a lot and all of these types of things. She incorporated kind of, this is how many hours it roughly takes to do these activities. This is the hourly rate of an average of our guys and as well as her time. And then also with an eye to 7-1, where there'll be a cost of living increase for our guys as well as her. Just kind of gets all of it, basically. And once we added all that up and looked at the bottom line, it was obvious that Mrs.'s numbers were much lower than that, as well as looking around at other communities, it's roughly we're about the same now, whereas before we were much cheaper.
But we weren't necessarily getting the best.
Yeah, correct. Yep. So, it's one of those things where we tried it the other way, but we were receiving enough criticism, and it's not the conversation you like to have
And
with
more, well,
people. So it's easier to just look at it ourselves, and we mow the lawns anyway. We do the other work associated with the cemeteries. So
it's all being brought back in house.
On that end, yep.
Question on the cremains.
Yep.
Why does it take 4 hours to open and 4 hours to close? What's a really small hole?
Yeah, so they're obviously not on site for all of that time. It does end up being multiple guys. You just can't send one person by themselves to do the work. Usually there's one person in the machine and one person out of the machine. So
You
if
use a
divide that by
machine?
2, that's the, typically we do.
Huh.
We could make them hand dig it, but you get a better cut, I think, with you don't. So I think that was, some of those mobilization costs and everything are kind of, no matter what size hole you dig, you're still going to mark out the hole, you're still sending 2 guys, you're still sending them with the same equipment to dig a bigger hole.
It just, the actual digging of the hole takes less time, so. And again, it's pretty much in line with some of the neighboring communities that we looked at. I don't think we're exorbitant on any of one particular line item.
And do you feel like our in-house members will be able to kind of?
Yeah, that was the other thing. We did pad them a little bit.
For a
You know, we
while.
rounded up to the nearest 50 or 100 to,
Right.
you know, build in, and, you know, we're not gonna be coming back to you next July to raise them again. Honestly, I don't know how long ago they ever
Right.
did this type of thing. I'm sure it was much cheaper back when they accepted them.
And you're gonna be, sorry.
Did you get your questions answered?
Well, I wondered, because there are other charges that were specified in some of the other towns that you collected. I appreciate the good research that you did on that. Disinterment costs from the city of Beverly, if that should come up, if we're taking this on and bringing it, as you said, in-house. Whether vaults are built for these.
Yep.
To prevent collapse of the
Yep.
soil around it. Whether that's included in the cost. Or whether just a liner goes in. And you were saying it's the same equipment for cremation, for burying cremains? You don't use a front end loader to dig that little hole.
No, we don't use a front end loader to dig any hole, but yeah, we have a mini excavator, and that's what we use usually to go back to the to dig all holes.
Okay.
And we just did get that mini, so I'm not sure what they would have used before that, but
Shovel?
probably small. They like the toys.
Good. We can leave that on the consent agenda.
Yeah.
Nobody's answered
Yeah,
questions. Yeah.
thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
for the
John.
input.
Yep.
And did you already mention Mill Street, you're striping Mill Street? You're thinking about striping Mill Street?
Yep. No, I will be. I asked Greg if I needed permission or to come in front of the board, but since I'm here, the thought is that, you know, before you get to speed bumps, there are several other
Right.
bag of tricks that you can do to try and get people to slow down. One thought is that to stripe a yellow at a minimum, and even a fog line, even if it's a lane that's 10 foot wide, gives people the perception they try and stay in their lane, so they have to drive slower. You know, some people, like with other things, will just ignore it and drive fast. But, you know, the people that aren't trying to speed or knowingly speeding will automatically, you know, it's kind of the law of how fast you can go. It's kind of so.
And when School Street get striped?
So we have a plan that we just got today that we're reviewing. We're probably gonna have some tweaks on that, and we are on the list for the striping contractor. But again, Manchester's such a small town. I didn't have this problem in Salem, but they basically can knock our town out, all the striping, in a night. So they just say, we're done in Gloucester for the night, so we're going to go to Manchester. Or we're done in Salem for the night. So the schedule, I'll say, is fluid. But I won't get that done before the 4th unless some miracle happens. But it will be very soon thereafter. You know.
Red, white, and blue stripe?
We could do that. We can do rainbows. We can do red. Do green and gold.
Just for the 4th.
Just for the fun.
Thank you, Jim. All right.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, sir. Thank you for having me.
We need to do more of those.
Good? You sure? I doubt that.
Maybe cleared you up. We're gonna do the consent agenda correspondence
we'll
and
stick
town
around.
administrator. Executive session.
All right. Hello, FinCom-ish.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna move to we're gonna come back to the consent agenda, the correspondence and town administrator's report, and we're gonna move to item 9, the discussion with FinCom regarding fund balance use and local receipts. And whatever else related to, financial position of the town that we would care to discuss. So, Maury, do you want to, open up?
Sure. So we've already been in session. We've just been meeting downstairs, going over some reserve fund things which have peeled off, and then basically started a quick discussion, which is really a continuation of several other discussions we've had regarding receipts, how conservative we are as a town in estimating receipts, what we should be doing with that going forward. One of the things that's pretty apparent to our committee over time is that the reserves have increased significantly. And we're noting it in 2011 as about 5 to 6% of operating. Now it's north of 16%. As Greg outlined in a document to us and probably to you, we'll probably finish this year close to 5.7 million in reserves. And if we target closer to 10 to 12%, that puts the number more in sort of the 3.7 billion category. So effectively, we're probably sitting on close to $2 million more in reserves than we probably could be. So the question is what to do with that over what period of time, and so we sort of have been tackling two questions: what to do with those funds, and number two, how to estimate receipts and budgets going forward so that that increase levels itself or comes down slightly. So that's been sort of the content of our meetings over the last, we've probably had 2 or 3 meetings on this over the last 5 months, 4 months talking about it. And I guess, anybody else have anything to add to that? I think one of the general thoughts on the $2 million fund and what you do with it, one thought is basically reducing debt, and that's either debt of the town moving toward capital exclusions and capital projects, or relief of debt for the school project. Another thought is reduction of the tax rate. Another is investing in OPEB because of possible returns there. And then I think the fourth category is accelerating capital projects around town in a meaningful and sustainable way to get some of the basic stuff done. I think one of the comments our committee has had is that we're uncomfortable with the notion of sort of stockpiling funds to do things that should be coming before the voters. So if those funds are used for things like pipes and I&I and infrastructure things, that's one thing. If it's sort of saying, hey, we've stockpiled a bunch of funds and now we want to go out and move the DPW from here to there, those are the types of issues we really think ought to be brought before the voters. And not sort of saying, hey, we've done this and now we're going to do that. But anybody have anything to?
Yeah, I think one of the other conversations we had is it doesn't matter whether you put a pot of money over here to save for something, whether it's in the reserve. It's all in the reserves. And our feeling is the reserves are too high. So we shouldn't be stockpiling more money into reserves, and we should be more realistic in our receipts estimates.
It's basically the voters haven't had a chance to approve that. I think if you told people that, you know, the overage every year is more than $700,000, they go, why'd I cut 2 teachers? Why'd I do this? Why didn't I vote for this? So I think that it's fiscally responsible to have a 10 to 12% reserve level, and the balance of it, I think we just must have gotten caught up in, hey, isn't it great to save money? We need to pave the streets, we need to do all that, but that really is not an honest approach to doing those projects.
Okay. Questions and comments from the board?
One of the options listed here is ease the burden of the new elementary school project. Have you guys talked about that? Yeah.
Mhm.
What's that feeling?
Well, for a period of time, we know that there's the bond of the high school that's still out there, but the
Right.
bond of the elementary school, and so it would be immediately relieving, is gonna become an excess burden on the taxpayers. So that's a benefit.
The other thing is a year-by-year decision.
Mhm.
So it gives you the flexibility of giving tax relief with not necessarily making it permanent.
But I think that has to be messaged out. I think the idea of pursuing, certain capital projects that have been, as Maury says, on the rolls for a while, sort of the well thought out, understood things that we need to do, those seem like a good target also.
But we don't want to overspend on capital projects because it tends to lead to building things before they're planned well. And we have had cases, particularly with the road work, where we took on more than the town was prepared to deal with, with the intersection of this and that being closed for most of the summer. So we would not like to put more into capital projects than the town can reasonably handle with its engineering capabilities.
Okay.
And then the other piece is how you estimate the receipts going forward. And we came up with a couple of formulas, but I think more, Greg is probably the authority on that. Because we discussed the fact that you don't want to be under per se, although we've got these numerous reserves, but as a policy, but how do we go somewhere between a huge amount over and protecting ourselves to a downside? And again, we kind of abstractly talked about formulas and looked at averages of receipts over the last 3 to 5 years, but I think it would be better, Greg, if you and your staff and Andrea said, here's what we think is a reasonable number going forward.
But what we had talked about was either a 3 or 5 year average of the actual receipts and then taking somewhere between 80 and 90% of that as our next estimate, not just increasing the current estimate by 10%.
Right.
I have a small raft of questions, but I'm gonna let you guys go first if you want to.
I have a question about using the, I hate to call it an excess reserve, but I guess that's the easiest way to identify it, towards reducing the burden of either of the 2 school projects that are active right now, and how complicated that is under the regional agreement. If we start throwing more money at it and reducing our cost.
Technically, we wouldn't, right? We would.
We're just covering our obligations.
We would just be paying in advance our obligations. Our obligations
We're
are
not,
tied to
we're
the
not
district.
paying it in advance, we're
No.
merely
But the district
saying
has the
that we're gonna
The district has the
increase,
fiscal arrangements.
we're gonna we're gonna decrease what we charge the taxpayer to pay off that bond in a given year, and take the difference from other monies we have in town. Our total payment to the school district doesn't change,
Mhm.
but on a year-by-year
Okay.
basis, we can adjust what
You're
we assess.
just adjusting down the override
Yep.
amount that's
That's a
Yes.
fancy
that floats with the
fancy way of
bonds.
paying
On a
in advance.
year-by-year basis.
Got it.
Based on what's
It's a
financed.
fancy way of paying in advance.
So,
Well-
yeah, so
Your obligations, the district, we're still gonna pay the district the same amount by
Right.
by contract.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
So that's
It
not
would
gonna
just-
change.
it's
We're
just
gonna
like-
give relief to the taxpayer.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
So that, typically what happens at town meeting is there's an operating vote, and then there's a debt a
Debt ex-
capital vote.
debt exclusion
And
override.
this is going at the debt and capital side, which ultimately is the nickel that the town has to come up with. It's just a portion of that nickel gets covered from other revenue sources or offset by other revenue sources.
Right, and it's really something that you do as part of your tax setting in what's called the recap in the fall, in November, when we actually set the actual tax rate. How much of other funds you use instead of through taxation gets put into that recap. It's not actually something the voters approve. They approve the expenditures, and then you have the flexibility of how you pay for those expenditures.
I'd be careful of conflating our ability to generate surplus with any of the optics of the school funding process. I think if you go and tie some sort of tax relief tied to school payment, even if it's optically, I don't know why we would do that, because we just went through a massive town effort to win hearts and minds. And a critic could say, you guys overshot and now you're coming back and you're admitting that it didn't, you know, it's almost like, why would you get into that whole package? That's almost like a hornet's nest, no pun.
We had that discussion, and the alternate is to not raise your full levy limit. But what we were led to believe is if you don't raise your full levy limit this year, then your base for the next year is based on what you did assess, so therefore you've made a permanent reduction, rather than a year by year.
You can only increase 2.5% the prior year, and if you reduce the prior year, you can't catch up.
Right.
I mean,
Not without doing another.
So there's more
What
flexibility.
you can catch up, it just takes a bigger hit in a subsequent year. Instead of a 2.5% increase, you'd have a 3.5% increase, which doesn't require an override because you're not over your levy limit. But it's just,
So you don't want to mess with tax rate.
well, that's a policy decision.
But to the point just made, which is
Yes.
a very good one, it could really
Correct.
bite us in the behind.
Right.
It catches
It
up.
lowers your base.
That's a
Yeah,
big- that's a
it's
real-
cumulative and it lowers your base.
That's
So
a-
there's sensitivities in different areas. Your point that we also talked about the bond and the sense, you know, what the voters are expecting to see and what we talked to them about versus, you know, maybe a 1 or 2 year relief from the full burden of that.
I just think you won that, won that battle, and, I mean, if there's surplus, go tackle other things that are on the horizon.
So that's why we say capital,
Yeah.
we're kind of down to capital if you take those two out.
The problem is we seem to have difficulty spending it all. So if we were to raise our receipts estimate by 700,000, now either we spend that 700,000 in that year, or else it goes into reserves. And what we've been doing over the past 9 years is we're just dumping it into reserves because we don't have the capacity to spend it all.
I thought you guys decoupled it well by talking about what you're gonna do in advance, which will correct that problem, versus what you have sitting here today. I agree with you guys, those are two separate problems.
Yep.
I think you guys have the right recommendation to address it going forward, which will take care of itself, and then the question is, what do you do with this? I just don't think you should go back to the school issue, because we kind of won that one in a hard way. And there's lots of other things to kind of win public goodwill about, not to play politics, but.
What the town voted for, in fact, was substantially more than what it's going to cost,
Yeah.
because we got a lower interest rate. So,
Yeah, that's true.
in fact, we are lowering the interest, effectively reducing the cost again by a smaller amount. So I don't think there'll be as much complaint that, oh, but I voted to spend $55 million and now I'm not gonna have to spend that.
No, I don't think people have a problem, obviously no one's gonna have a problem with that, but I think, you know, a critic could say,
Credibility.
why didn't you guys get it in the first place?
Because.
Like, why am I gonna trust you on the next time?
I took your exact position, Art. I've been moved a little bit from it, but I, for obvious reasons, felt that pain. So, you know, once you get the deal done, you know, well, wait a minute, it got better than that?
Yeah.
I can make the argument about the interest rate. I can't make the argument, we found $1 million.
Yeah.
Whoops.
It
So
just seems
the-
like there's other problems sitting
Yeah,
around.
there are
Chuck
plenty
just
of other
laughed. We got the
problems,
sewage
and it-
treatment plant, we got lots of things to.
Right, we'd be happy to increase our capacity to get things done, because there is a long list of things that need.
I do think it's important, I mean, I think everything you guys are saying is right, I mean, I think if we were to talk about the sewage treatment plant, or we talk about anything, like it does, I do think it's important to get town consent.
I do think that, Greg's heard this from our committee a couple times, but that the engineering and the capital spend balance be in alignment. I think when you go out, if you're doing roads in I&I, the town's pretty good at that, you know. You pour money at it, you get a certain number of miles done. I think we stray into rougher waters on things like buildings and structures and ramps and stuff like that. And I think there needs to be some real engineering care that's balanced with the spend level, because this cycles around in a bad way when, you know, we have unanticipated things going on with structures and changes and delays and gets in the paper, and it's just not a good thing in the long run.
Most projects, the investment up front makes the whole difference in the execution.
Sure does.
And we haven't had, frankly, a very good track record in that regard. But hopefully Chuck and his new hire, if Greg's put in place a system that will be better.
Can I ask a question about the OPEB option? I've commented on this before, and I'll restate my position. I think we're doing a pretty good job with OPEB. All the signs are that we're doing a very good job, and compared to all the other municipalities out there, we're doing a spectacular job with respect to our OPEB situation. So the way I see putting more money into the OPEB solution or issue, I don't see the real benefit to us, especially if we're talking about money that we otherwise by default would dedicate towards capital projects. And my thinking on this has been that if we look at the construction costs year over year, the average increase in construction costs for the past 10 years or so, the escalation has been around 7%. And we feel that every time we go out to do another construction project. And if we delay a project, we say, well, that's going to hurt because we're going to wait and it's going to be 7% more expensive next year around. Money that we put into OPEB is going to be earning money along those kind of lines. But it is not going to be money that any of our residents are actually going to see next year or the year after. They're not going to see a tangible benefit out of that. So we're just going to take that money and we're going to put it away, and as far as the residents are concerned, it's going to vanish. But the benefit, the financial benefit, if you compare doing capital project versus putting in OPEB, might be about a wash.
I would argue that a little bit, Eli, because one option the town does have is they can feed their current life and health insurance expenses through that OPEB trust. So you can get relief through the OPEB trust. You don't have to just stuff it there and not use it. We're doing a pay-as-you-go for the current and an OPEB funding. You can merge those two and feed the whole amount of money into the OPEB trust and therefore use, in effect, earnings on the OPEB trust to decrease your current costs and get budget relief from it. Right?
Yes, that's true.
So there is that option. And we're making good money, we're making better returns on that than any other money we have invested.
By a lot.
Yeah. We lost money in stabilization last year on the investments.
Well, I could potentially see an argument along those lines, so long as it was something that came back to residents in an immediate and tangible manner. Especially if we were talking about that for future funds. As far as the money that we've, stockpiled over the years that we think ought to be spent down, personally, I lean towards using that for some capital project which has been crying out. The one that we talked about, crying out for attention, one that we've talked about in the past multiple times has been the senior center, which we haven't, part of the challenge has been finding space that's reasonable, and the other challenge is, all right, well, maybe we're going to have to put some money into that. We're either going to have to go and ask for another debt exclusion on top of the schools, which would be a painful thing. It'd be very ironic, actually. It says, hey, we're going to build you a great senior center, but we're going to ding you all for it. It seems to me a project like that, using some of the overage, the current surplus in the reserves would be a pretty good target. I'm assuming that you guys have, well, you've definitely talked about that. We've talked about that before.
Yeah, it's come up, I think. No commentary on the value of that project per se, but rather, just, working on the backlog of other, pipes and wire type things, obviously less marketable to the town perhaps.
Yeah.
But maybe there's, I think, part of, my feeling is, I think there's room to do a few things.
Mm-hmm.
Whether, you don't want to touch the third rail of trying to reduce bond on the school project, fine. But, there could be theoretically an opportunity to do some of that, do some capital, and, mix it up.
I think it really could be a blend of things. The senior center, I think, is an interesting one. Again, I think that goes back into this category of planning, long-term planning. To sort of say, hey, we're sitting on funds right now and it's a need, let's do something with it. Have all the pieces really been thought out? Do we really have a good sense of where the best location is for this, the best use of funds for this? Affordable housing is something that's kind of on the table. Infrastructure issues. There's all sorts of things around. I guess the issue is, are we being thoughtful and purposeful about what the long-term direction is, and are we spending the dollars toward the best long-term solution here, rather than, hey, we got it, let's do something soon. So,
All right. So the other thing is, you mentioned a formula of, and I know you said that Greg and Andrea should put together a proposal for how much of a correction we make on a local receipts estimation. But you also mentioned 3 to 5 year average of actual reports and then take 80-90%. Have you, and I'm not actually asking you for a complete position, but have you actually, in your research on this so far, done any look backs to see if there were times in the past 10, 20 years when there were actual significant dips? What happened in 2008, that sort of thing?
I did in fact look at receipts between 2007 and 2017, and in the depth of the recession, the receipts dropped, actual receipts dropped by about 10%.
So 80% would be very conservative. Still.
It really was.
For how long?
It went, I think it was up to its previous level of about 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it was surprised. I was hoping to find a different number, and I was very disappointed.
You mean a smaller number?
No, I was hoping to find a good reason why we should underestimate our receipts because
Yep.
of the volatility of excise taxes and new growth.
Well, we've long taken it as a very conservative position to take, and that's a good and healthy thing to do. But I guess it basically says, well, we've been a little too conservative.
If your volatility is 10% in global economic crisis, you've overestimated.
A little hard to argue with that.
What's that?
A little hard to argue with that.
There you go.
Greg, maybe just recap, receipts are roughly what percentage are excise and, we've talked about
The biggest number is the excise tax.
Yeah.
So let's round to 2 million in local receipts. Excise is 800, 900 of that, not quite half. Your permit fees are pretty high, they're in the 250 range. Park and rec revenue is high. It's in that similar range, 250-ish. And then there's us, sort of a smattering of lots of miscellaneous.
Park and Rec took a bit of a hit last year with, of course, beach revenues and the state of that beach. And
Right.
you know off the top of your head what?
It wasn't huge.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Again, it's probably in that 10%, 15% range. So not terrible.
All right. Anything you would like to hear from us? Don't take that as a blank checkbook, so to speak.
We always do.
You know we are.
No, I think we're anxious to start the budget process and get going on this. I think an estimating or an averaging of receipts over the last several years and something that sort of puts a band in there, gives some concrete numbers to sort of say, all right, where does this sit? And that starts to address the path we've been on and how to bring it back into a little more of a normal state.
We've beat this up a fair amount, so we're happy to start to conclude.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that since I've been on this board, have advocated for, and I think there's been progress on it, but a real, well thought out, 5 to 10 year capital plan with prioritization to each project and real engineering, as Maury said, to what it's gonna cost.
That's where we're at.
Is critical.
Yeah.
And, senior center's great, but wasn't on the capital plan last year. So if you wanna add them, kind of in between, that's okay, but that's not fiscal planning in my opinion.
How do you want to differentiate the capital planning from the 5 to 10 year planning that we're currently doing from what you're talking about?
Well, I think the 5 to 10 year capital planning is just that, it's just capital projects that otherwise are not in the normal course of operations.
You guys had that list.
I've had that list, yeah, but so pick something on that list. The senior center wasn't on that list.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I think maybe a more concrete prioritization process.
Yeah.
It's like, let's fix 5 roads a year, let's fix it, like, okay, what about the DPW building? What about this building? What about?
I guess my comment about the senior center was driven out of the, we don't have it on the capital project, but we know it's, something that
It's
residents.
opportunistic.
It is opportunistic, and in this particular case, I would advocate for it. I wouldn't advocate for it on a regular basis to stash money and then do exactly what I'm proposing, but that's where we are right now.
Yeah, but I have an 86-year-old mother in town, and even I would say, if you look at the 5 to 10 year window, like I would worry more about the police staying in that facility for 10 more years. Don't tell my mother that, but.
Well, and my motivation is in part driven by the fact that these people have supported us doing some very large projects that do not directly benefit them. Two very large school
But
projects.
they've been here and they have in the past, Eli. This is the whole subject of just
I
because
know.
you don't have a kid in the school doesn't mean, you know,
Yeah.
you went to the school or somebody did. So
I
I get it,
know.
and they probably deserve a senior
And
center.
you always do is
I'm
brackets
not
come
even
out.
arguing against it. As a matter of fact, I'm on the committee. So we've done a lot of work since we last met. I'm just using it as an example. that- And I think if people sat down and said, what are our priorities? That you just outlined is a priority. Whether or not that building was available or not, that's a priority of the chair of the board of selectmen. It should be on that list. Where it goes on the list is up to you guys.
It's not just a priority today, you gotta put yourself in the mindset of 10 years from now, what would you expect? And that's, to me, like a whole different set of capital spending than what we may think today. And I'm a big champion of the senior center, I love the senior center idea, but if I'm seriously thinking out 10 years, the needs of this town cover a lot more than just seniors. There's, so when you talk about the size of an availability of money, it's, but anyway, I'm just one vote. But I agree with the process, irrespective of what I'm saying personally, I think we do need a process of going back to that list. I remember that list very, very well from 6 months ago. There's a lot on there, and we can put the senior center on there, there's nothing to say we don't.
Put it at the top.
I would also put the, you know, it just popped into my mind, like, does it have to be a structure? Like, what about the next obligation on the harbor dredging? Like, there's big service dollars coming up as well, not just buildings.
I mean, prior to the school, so this is probably a year and a half ago, we sat down and took a look at that list and actually just went totally open loop and put everything we could possibly put on there and some probability numbers next to it. And apart from the dollar volume being kind of staggering.
Over 100 grand. I remember that.
It actually
110,
outlined.
120 grand, that was what I
Yeah,
recall.
it was up there.
120 million, yeah.
At least. But
Yeah, no,
again,
not
times are frank, you know, you
Wish
look
it
at that
was
over 20 or 30 years. You know, it's a big list, but it's a lot of time to work on it. But that's the type of thing, where does the town want to be in 10 years? You know, what is the town's objective for road conditions 10 years from now? What's the town's condition or objective for pipes and I 10 years from now? Sewer treatment, electrical, town hall, whatever. But map those out and focus on them. It's very easy when we look at that list each year with the columns to say, well, this isn't moving as fast as that, so we're gonna shift a little here and a little there. I think it needs to be more concrete. You do big things by focusing on things and sticking to the knitting.
Well, there is a proxy.
The good
though.
news is the $2 million is there. It's not like you gotta spend it in 20 minutes or it's gone.
Right.
We
You can
need
be
to just
patient.
have a proper plan, as Maury said, of engineering and
Yeah.
prioritization and use it judiciously. So that's part one, and part two is our advocacy is that should not grow as fast as it has in past years, so let's revise the estimates. So it's a two-part thing, but the part one doesn't have to be done in the next 20 minutes.
All right.
So, well, the second question was, are there some priority research areas for the 21 budget? So I know that seems a long way off, but are there things you want us to get underway over the course of the summer before the budget process starts in the fall? Are there a handful of areas that you have identified or we need more time to think
about?
about?
General budget process or tied to this conversation?
Separate from this one.
Okay.
Separate from capital and that kind of planning. That's a pretty clear message. But are there other areas of research in terms, I'm thinking more of operating?
Although I think operating could tie back to that last conversation, because I think
Yes.
the best proxy for where some of the capital spending might go is what drives people to town meeting on an annual basis. And education is one which we've already spent money on. I don't think we need to revisit that one. The other one is emergency services.
Right.
If you want to drive people to town meeting, you start talking about ambulances and fire trucks. So if you're talking about the 10-year plan, I think that's going to be up there in terms of what you might spend money on.
I would advocate for that because, you know, we've talked about how with the various leadership that we've had, for the fire department in particular, they all have a different philosophy about how big the trucks need to be. You You know, how we're supposed to save for them and, you know, all this, and those are huge expenses. It would be great to have the town's opinion on what that might be, you know, I don't know how we get it, you know, I don't know if there's a,
Put trees on the agenda.
what's that?
Put trees on the agenda.
Put trees on the agenda.
You knew that.
Either that or memorials.
Oh, you could put dogs on.
The other thing, though, I think
Or
that
don't.
we've talked about with you
No.
guys is this regionalization. We now have a temporary chief. We have in both fire and in police, two of our biggest operating budgets. Where are we headed? How do we help? How does this all come together? You know?
I think the other area is dispatch, you know, that supposedly the state is taking people in, is gonna be taking people into that dispatch center. Is that something we wanna look at or not?
Well, the change there is, the major one that we've heard is that they're no longer going to charge that 1624
Right.
per capita. So now the calculus is considerably different for us. And if the state were running it, the concerns that we had years ago about, the valid concerns that we had about the operational aspects of that center might well change. So that may be something that we really need to revisit.
Look at it again, yeah.
As a priority for this year, I don't know that we can chase that one this year. And as far as the regionalization is concerned, we're still waiting for the final report from the,
We'll have that in July. It's slipped a month.
yeah,
But it's fair to say there won't be
it won't be a magic bullet.
there won't be any really exciting
Which is
large
which
problems.
is telling for back to our 10-year conversation, because it looks like we're probably gonna be largely on our own.
Yeah.
So if we know that, that's actually a pretty critical piece of information.
Yeah.
So what is our plan on our own for the next 10 years? Because it's a big chunk of the annual
Yep.
operating budget, and as a result, what's our capital plan around that operating spend? Because
Right,
with
no,
the
they do,
facilities
yeah.
we have, I don't know if we can continue to spend at the level they're spending and expect the same level of service.
Right.
So that's actually, that regionalization, what's not in the regionalization report is
It's-
probably the most
it's-
interesting thing that's gonna come out of that.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
All right, what else are we accomplishing tonight on this front? We good?
Yeah, if you have ideas of what you'd like to see us really diving deep into over the next few months, that would be helpful to hear. So I'm hearing public safety, I'm hearing capital.
Those are the two.
But the level of thought you guys gave to all this is great as a compliment, because makes the conversation move a lot faster.
It took a bit to get there.
Like I said, we beat it up pretty good.
We kick this around pretty hard.
And we appreciate
It's
it because you
quite
boiled
clear.
it down to make sense and provide us some logic, so much appreciated.
All right.
Thanks for listening.
Put some trees on your agenda.
This room was a little
And dogs, yeah, dogs.
downstairs.
Yeah.
Did you close your public hearing?
We did not.
No, we continued one of them, closed the other ones. The town common one is continued. Come back,
You guys are
you'll
welcome
have
to
an
go.
opportunity, you can all talk
I think
about
you'll
it.
need to.
What channel is it?
Good night.
Do you want to vote to close your meeting?
So we'll
Thank you.
close our meeting, we'll just do that outside. But I'll get in contact with you about the next meeting, for us.
Right, so, with any luck, we won't need a July 10 one.
Okay.
We'll know in the next week.
Oh.
But-
Maybe shoot for August?
Yeah,
Okay, so maybe we can do an email roundabout, find out who's available.
yeah. Assuming there's no huge surprise, we should be okay.
Did you guys discuss those new budget, those
Yes,
transfers?
they did.
Yes.
They approved them.
We approved everything. It was a good night.
I saw, we voted on a number you had signed, and then I think there's one or two, which.
Two more that I had not, that just came in.
Right.
Christine, we nuked your tree.
All right.
Well, not quite, it's going down, but it's not really.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank
Dan needs changes soon, she's.
Do you need that?
Well, if you could give me your changes, then I could get them, I can get it posted before I'm out.
Great, I can mail them to you
Of
tonight.
course.
Do you need
Guys.
One
copies of
sentence.
reserve transfers we voted on?
Greg does.
We'll move to adjourn.
Second,
All in favor?
are we
All
adjourning?
Unanimous, yeah, I see that.
Yeah.
It's unanimous, I can
Bye.
tell.
All right, we're adjourned.
All right, our consent.
Lucky.
Thanks, Maureen.
All right, good night.
Good night. Environmental Resources Management to let us know about a project which is happening offshore from here that we don't really have to worry about very much. Now, Town Administrator's Report.
So I think pretty self-explanatory. I don't feel a need to elaborate much more, unless you have questions on any of those points. We do have the special workshop coming up on the 12th. I think, Eli, you were going to be working on
Yes, I will be sending out an
format
agenda
for that. If all of you have ideas or thoughts on what you'd like to cover, that would be helpful to hear soon as we get ready for that. We'll have a meeting on July 8th, but before that, but if you have your ideas on that, I think that would be helpful.
And the August meetings, I think we said August 5th and 19th.
We're back on schedule.
Yeah.
So it'd be the 1st, which is the 5th, first Monday, and the 3rd Monday, which is the 19th
Yeah.
of August. So July would be the 8th, special meeting on the 12th, and then a regular meeting on the 22nd, and then August 5 and 19.
Is this for us?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm on vacation.
Which ones?
The week of the 5th and maybe the part of the 12th as well.
That's fine. So you'd miss the 5th, but you'd be there for the 19th. People take vacations.
I'll be there for the 19th for sure.
Yeah, all right.
And then we meet on the Tuesday after Labor Day, because the next date that would fall would be Labor Day.
Right, so September 3rd.
Yeah.
Okay.
And 16th.
The meeting would be September 3rd?
I mean, assuming that's good for folks. To wish the summer away.
Really?
Is it possible, I know that things will change, but I just want to make sure that I maneuver work around. How far out could we theoretically go? Not tonight, but at some point in the near future?
I think it's reasonable for us to project out 3 months.
Yeah, we could do the fall.
If you don't mind.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it right now, but just,
Yeah.
like, maybe let's do it
Yeah.
over the course of
We'll put out hard, I'll tell you what, we'll put out some hard numbers for 3 months and then projected numbers for 3 months after that.
Okay.
And start floating them right away.
That'd be great. That would help me enormously, because
Yeah.
I do have some manageability.
With enough lead time.
With enough lead time.
Yeah.
Got it.
July 4th parade.
I have a question in terms of your report, Greg.
Yeah.
This, and I don't want to get into a lot of detail about this, but this shark sighting,
Right.
and you indicated that you wanted to be out front with it, but you didn't want to create panic. A large shark, and my immediate thought was, okay, what's a large shark? A large shark to some people is a dogfish that's 4 feet long. Was there any other detail? And
There's some
what
more-
about the reliability of sources in terms of creating panic?
Right. There was more detail that I learned today.
Uh-huh.
Because I didn't hear the full report the first time around.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to cause.
What was the detail?
Well, the person who saw it was convinced that it was a great white.
How do we know that?
And this
Because
person.
he saw it belly up with its mouth open.
And a credible.
And this person knows sharks well enough, has been out in the ocean.
Seasoned fishermen that buy
Very
and
seasoned
trust.
fishermen, yeah.
Buy and trust this person a lot. So the shark splashed. I mean, it splashed water so that it knocked a person over in the boat. It was that large of a sea creature. So it was quite a volume of water that this thing threw at the boat, and it revealed its mouth was wide open when it did that maneuver on its back.
Even so, like, I don't wanna be argumentative at all, but I've been spent, I'm old enough to now talk this way, I've spent over 40 years on the water.
Yeah.
And I was in Chatham 2 summers ago with my kids out about a mile offshore, and we saw this dorsal fin go by. I started snapping pictures, and we were all convinced it was a great white.
Yep.
I sent it to Greg Scomo, who's the Massachusetts
Yep.
State Director for Shark Research. He's like, no, it's a thresher shark.
Right.
So there are things that like physically look like a great white, and they're not. So I'm just concerned. I don't have a problem with alerting the public. I think it's our obligation, but I am concerned to what end? Like, what is the expected outcome?
Right.
Notifying for the sake of notifying, I might be speaking on my own. When I saw that, I was appreciative of the desire to help the public, but then I began
But how
to
much
wonder,
help are
like,
we providing?
what is it leading to? Like,
Well, so let me ask this, are you aware, Greg, of any feedback that came from the general public once that information was released?
We
Did
didn't.
the police get, you know,
Yeah, we didn't get a
covered in
lot.
phone calls? Did Bion
They-
get a lot of
Bion
contact?
got a lot of calls or emails.
From like our local boating society, you know, groups, or just?
Individuals, I think, just saying, you know, how,
but you had to have
how worried.
MSA mothers, because the kids are now doing capsizing drills this morning.
Well,
Right.
but
Well,
that's,
Once you were in the water.
but that's up
And
to
we haven't
the
seen anything
MSA to make
since.
their own decisions. I was just curious what, you know, was there and I'm not using the word panic, but it's a lack of coming up with anything else. Was there a rush to think, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh?
No, there wasn't. There
Okay.
wasn't. And there hasn't been a sighting since.
Right.
and
Right.
So,
And the bigger concern would be people on paddle boards.
yes.
To me, the bigger concern
But
is
people on
credibility.
paddle boards are not likely to be out by House Island.
No, you do see some. You do see some. Depending on the weather, depending on the wind.
Yeah.
I just think we need to find a way to note, so I appreciate the effort to get the word out. I'm not sure the phrasing of large shark ending up on Channel 7 News.
Yeah,
The dissonance
don't-
of the whole thing.
Yeah, I think I would keep it more
That's
internal.
what this group can't manage and control. If information is given, even on the town's Facebook page, what happens to it after that, we can't control.
But to my point, we can control the message.
I agree, and that's what we've been talking about. But to say, well, yeah, but then what happens when so-and-so picks it up and runs with it, and sends a
Yeah.
television crew to town or whatever, we can't
I'm
manage
not
that.
saying that we should worry about Channel 7 News, but I think to the original point made, issuing a press release saying large shark
Yeah, I think
is a
it's-
very vague thing to be issuing an announcement about.
Right.
That's
So I will play devil's advocate and just say, what happens when something?
suspicious plane flew over town. Like, there's a lot of things that.
Go ahead, play devil's advocate.
So we don't communicate something that a credible individual feels was seen, and then something happens.
I think that you just hit the nail on the head. How credible is this person and how much knowledge do they have of what's in the water?
I go back to our professional harbor master.
Yeah.
Who has spent his life on the ocean.
Yeah.
And feel like if our professional harbor master felt it was important to
agree.
communicate something, I'm good.
I agree, and I agree with you, Muffin.
Yeah, I'm good.
I mean, I used to live in the Bay Area. I lived there for 16 years, and there would be sightings of great whites off of Stinson Beach
Yeah.
every year. And sometimes they would close the beach because there were multiple sightings. I think a single sighting needs to be communicated. I think if there's multiple sightings, we need to start to think about maybe there's a plan that goes beyond that. But then they would reopen the beach and the surfers would go out there and they would hang in the water and dangle their legs and take their chances because there were great whites in that water and they knew it.
I have no issue with notifying the public. I just think the way we notify the public needs to be more deliberate.
And as specific as possible.
It felt like it was just putting it out there to get attention, and we got attention, but now to what end? Like, so what do we do about it? And that's what I'm still left wondering, like, what do we, so what? Like,
Well,
so
Yeah.
it's just wide open this weekend, the kids are doing capsizing drills, like nothing's,
I think we need to think about a plan if there are multiple sightings, because the water's changing.
Yeah.
And what's coming into the water at this point here is changing. And we need to think about a plan for, is there a, I don't know, an alert level that you start to get concerned about? I think that communicating the basic information needs to be as specific as possible. And between when that announcement went out and today is a long time to find out that the person was very experienced and thought it might be a great white. I think that needs to be known. I'm not worried about people panicking about, a great white was seen off of House Island. If they panic, then they need to get used to what's happening in the water.
well, if we felt like it was a great white, we should have said it was a great white, not just say a large shark.
I agree.
Right.
But we need a specific amount of information as we can get.
So I think
And that this was a single sighting.
so there's these two things separately. One is our shark plan, to your
Yeah.
point, because I think sharks have always been here. It's not new. So yes, there may be more activity and we need to have a plan. Secondly, I think getting back to, we're not gonna revisit the communication discussion, but this does slip back into how we communicate. And I think we need to put that back, park that one in our communication strategy.
And the board should maybe have, a dangerous fish hearing.
I feel like we're taking potentially a single incident and starting to try to build policy around it and I think really what we should be doing is relying on our professional staff to tell us we need to have some policy around this because this is an issue. And I'm not
Well,
getting
so-
that message from our professional staff right now.
So they-
We're
they-
talking about it.
They do have a plan at the beach if a shark is spotted off the beach.
Right.
So Cheryl and her lifeguards, they have a protocol that they would follow. Brian has a protocol to notify the beach operations and if he sees something in his patrol, or if he hears about it.
But then playing that out, and again, I don't want to unpack a communication discussion, but I do think we need to kind of, to that point, like, what happens then?
Right.
Anyway,
That's not as clear cut right now.
we'll fix it. We'll fix it.
All right, we're done with the shark?
I'm done with the shark.
Thank you. You done with?
Yeah, just if,
Not beating a dead shark.
we don't have to take time right now, but if you individually have thoughts about number 4 on the IT work, I'd be interested in hearing it. But you can do that offline with me, one-on-one.
I would like to just make one comment, and the comment is, if the network's running smoothly, and Steve's not breaking a sweat, then maybe he's doing his job.
Right.
If there's problems with the network and he's not breaking a sweat, then I really think you need to consider replacing him. But if the network is running smoothly and he's not breaking a sweat, that's the way that you want it to be. Just my comment.
Yep.
July 4th parade. We're in it. Flags.
Ordered.
Flags are arrived.
Thank you.
Flags are here.
Flags are here.
We will acquire golf carts, 1 or 2. Is Brad?
I don't know. I'll talk to him. I don't know.
All right. And the meeting time for that will be
What do we usually do?
8:30?
8:30, yeah, on the corner.
8:30 over by Dr. Power's office.
And I'm in the midst of, your kids want to help us this year?
They would love to.
Perfect, bring them.
Okay.
And I'm in the midst of getting 3 or 4, maybe 5 others.
They already asked.
Oh, that's awesome. Good.
Very
Casual
I just-
attire.
The more hands, the merrier. Because we need to keep moving. When we slow down doing the flags, it just slows everything down. So the more hands,
Yep.
littler hands, the better. People think they're cuter anyway.
One of them gonna dress up as a shark.
Ah, there you go. There you go. And the other one will have branches out of their back.
The other will be a tree.
Yeah, the other will be a tree.
Right.
So yeah, so that's the plan. And I have the cart decorations in the bag, so.
All right. So
We're good.
I guess I will negotiate a couple of carts.
Yeah.
I can do that if you need help.
Yeah.
You can?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Done.
great.
Okay.
That was the easiest thing.
That was it for.
I just know, can I make one, Eli?
Yep.
On that, I just went through that Singing Beach letter, and
Yeah.
technically no one signed it.
Exactly.
I know. It's an anonymous letter.
Oh, so.
It's just in there
It's
as
one of the first that
informational.
we got.
Nothing to act
Yeah.
on.
I thought the blank page was a signature that didn't come through.
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay, all right,
It was an anonymous letter.
carry on.
That is all we have for open session. So,
Am I clear to leave?
well, we'll tell you when you have to. I will make a motion that we move into executive session to return to open session. Per Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Subparagraph 2, to discuss contract negotiations with a non-union personnel, the town administrator. Roll call vote. Mr. Stein?
Yes.
Mr. Bowling, yes. Ms. Driscoll?
Yes.
Ms. Jett? So, we will now be going into executive session for a brief parley with the town administrator, and then we will be returning to open session briefly to hopefully finalize contract. And that's it, if you want.